An entitled Karen demands that I give her my parking space, even though I had a disabled parking badge and I was waiting for my disabled partner. Things got so bad that she literally said she was going to sue me and that I would get in real legal trouble if I didn't give in to her demands, causing security to show up and finally shut this idiot down. Here's how it happened. Okay, this was a wild situation. I was picking up my disabled partner from the hospital, where we had been there for the last 2 weeks from a life-threatening incident. His team told me not to worry about traveling up to the ward, that they would escort him down to the car with his stuff if I grabbed a disabled spot. And I thought to myself, great, that works out just fine. I grabbed the spot as close to the ward as I possibly could, put his disabled badge on display, and then I waited. And it's then that I hear someone say, "Excuse me." I pop my head out of the window and I see a lady in her 50s has pulled up behind me. She asked me to move as she has her disabled mother with her and she needs the space. But I explained that I was waiting for my disabled partner, so I needed the space. She then said to me, "Well, go wait somewhere else. I need this space. My mother is disabled and you're not." Now, I could have handled this more graciously, but instead I laughed. I told her to go away, and then I put my head back in my car and I turned the radio up. And you know what? This set her off. She got out of her car, walked up to my window, called me rude and unsympathetic, accused me of misusing a disabled badge, and demanded that I move. Now, I did not feel any need to explain my situation to this entitled jerk. I just had a truly awful 2 weeks thinking I was going to lose my partner. Now, I don't know why I did it, and I knew this would set her off more, but I was over it because I said smile and I took her picture. And oh boy, did this really set her off. She was absolutely flabbergasted. She whipped out a card that said press on it and told me that she worked for the press, and if I didn't delete the picture, there would be legal action. By this point, I was locked in. I told her, no, I'm gonna keep it, and I took another picture. She then started screaming for security. Everyone was looking our way, and she gave me a crazy smile when security started walking over, as if to say, "Oh, you're in trouble right now." Security came over, and all they could see was this very angry and rather large lady at my window with me in my car. She demanded they take my phone and delete the photos, and demanded that they tell me to move my car. She was waving her press card around like it was a police badge, but the security had a look on his face that was so unbelievably done with this. They look at me, look at the disabled badge, and then look at her. They told her to leave as she was very clearly harassing me, and that I was doing nothing wrong by parking in a disabled bay, and that I was allowed to take photos of someone harassing me. Well, her crap-eating grin turned into a shocked Pikachu face. She called us all jerks and got back in her car and left. My partner then arrived being escorted by his nurse, and all of us, namely my partner and I, the security and the nurse, had a good chuckle at the entitlement that people have against young people with disabilities. Because honestly, this whole situation was insane to me. Dude, imagine being such an entitled piece of crap that you try to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get you in legal trouble if you don't get rid of that picture of me." Personally, I think that's a fantastic way to not only set somebody off, but also to get back at them in a serious way. Because guess what? If they're gonna be nasty to you, especially over something like this, then they should absolutely be prepared for the consequences of being humiliated in the process. And I just love how she's waving around her press badge as if that gives her any kind of authority here. It's like, dude, you of all people should know that that person has every right to take pictures of you if they want to, especially if you're screaming at them through their window. Like, dude, I would be recording you nonstop if you did that to me. Who knows if you would like slash my tires or break a window. So honestly, good for you for getting under this entitled Karen's skin, because she quite literally played herself in the process. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mom is incredibly controlling, as I feel she is manipulating me in ways that are very uncomfortable, and I'm now left wondering how I could put up healthy boundaries between the two of us, because right now I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 26-year-old female and I struggle with boundaries and feeling guilty when it comes to my parents, specifically my mom, and I just don't know how to deal with it. For context, I went to America to au pair in July of 2021, and I got back in August of 2023. In the beginning of February 2024, my parents moved to a new house that had an apartment on the property, which I then moved into. At the end of February, I reconnected with a guy I knew from 2020, and we started dating, which then led to moving into an apartment together in the beginning of June of 2024. And yes, I know that's quick, but the apartment is an estate that is literally a 3-minute drive from my parents' house. The first couple of months living in the apartment with my boyfriend was tough because of my parents. They struggle with me not living at home anymore and would make a big deal about us only visiting them a couple times a week. They were often rude to myself and my boyfriend, and the atmosphere was very awkward when we visited, and this put a strain on my relationship. Fast forward to now, and my boyfriend and I have been living together for over a year, and we just extended our lease for another 2 years. The situation with my parents has slightly improved, but my mom still gets upset with me if I don't visit her enough. And honestly, I don't even know what enough is because sometimes I go to the house 3 or more times a week for hours at a time. We have also repeatedly invited her over and told her that she's welcome to come to our apartment for coffee or to visit, but she just never does that. She always has some excuse like, you know I'm busy, but then makes me feel bad when I don't make the effort to go there as often as she expects me to. She also gets annoyed and is moody with us if we ask to go visit them at their house and we just so happen to be a few minutes late. But then sometimes we get to the house on time and she's hours late. I'm 26 years old and I feel so guilty for not wanting to visit all the time. I get nervous if I haven't visited for a few days. I get afraid and anxious if I or my boyfriend is running late, and there's a chance we won't get to my parents' house on time because I know she's going to be annoyed, and something will get said to either me, my boyfriend, or the both of us when we see them again. The most recent situation was me switching my location off on the Life 360 application that my family all uses, and shortly after moving in with my boyfriend, I switched my location off because I feel like I'm an adult, and my family doesn't have to know my every move. Well, almost a year later, and my mom still reprimands me for it, and said to me last week, "Don't get upset with me. I'm your mom and I just want to know you're safe." I still haven't turned my location back on, and I just don't know how to stand up for myself. So instead, I just tell her I understand. When she gets annoyed or upset about something, I get scared and I feel like a child again. I'm so nervous and afraid of the switch in her tone of voice. So how do I establish healthy boundaries with her and not feel guilty? This is really taking a toll on my mental health, and my anxiety is awful right now. What should I do? Dude, you absolutely need to start standing up for yourself. And it really is as simple as saying no. Like, that's a complete sentence. If she wants you to do something and you don't want to do it, you can say no and that's the end of it. And my God, the fact that she's trying to follow your every move at the age of 26, with that stupid Life 360 app, absolutely not. That's not going to be okay with me. The second she's trying to be like, I'm just trying to make sure you're safe. That's super toxic and very manipulative. That really does seem like she's trying to manipulate the situation. And if anything, it really seems like your mom is super controlling. And that's not okay either. That has to stop. Because you've got it right in my opinion. You're an adult and you don't have to deal with this. This is some weird, silly behavior that absolutely is below you. So no, you don't have to put up with this crap, and yes, you absolutely can put up healthy boundaries. And it all begins with saying no and literally standing your ground and not letting them shake you even for a second. An entitled Karen kept trying to jump ahead in the check-in line as she tried to ensure that she would be the first one seen by the doctor today, despite the fact that she never checked in properly, forcing her to wait even longer simply because she was being super selfish. Here's what happened. A few weeks back, I had a morning appointment at my doctor's office, the kind of busy clinic that handles everything from checkups to minor procedures. When you arrive, you're supposed to check in at the front desk and get your name on the list. I mean, this is basic stuff that pretty much anybody could do. I showed up a bit early and was second in line behind the older dude with a cane. We were just standing there making small talk about the weather when this woman in her 30s burst in. She's got this massive purse, she's chatting loudly on her phone like she's the only person in the room. Then out of nowhere, she just walked right up to the desk, cutting in front of us like we were completely invisible. The guy in front of me, being all polite, said, "Ma'am, there is a line." And she hit him with the classic response, "Well, I'm just asking a quick question." But it was anything but quick. She started pulling out all this paperwork, asking about insurance and demanding an earlier appointment. And get this, she wasn't even there for the same doctor. The poor receptionist looked like she was about to lose it. Finally, it was my turn and I stepped up, trying to keep it cool. I said to him, "Hey, just so you know, that woman never checked in. She said she was just asking about something." Then the receptionist blinked at me, nodded, and moved on. Fast forward 30 minutes and guess who came storming back? Yeah, it's the same woman, furious that other people were getting seen before her. The receptionist calmly told her, "Look, you didn't check in. I thought you were just asking a quick question." Well, she plopped down in the chair fuming. I then got called in right after that, and as I passed her, I couldn't help but smile and say, "Enjoy your wait." Yeah, I love how this one ends. That's really a lot of fun. As someone who has worked at a doctor's office at least once in their life, first of all, that is a job I will never do twice, but also dealing with people like this is so obnoxious because you know for a fact they're just trying to get ahead of everybody else and cut the line. That's their entire goal. They want to ignore the schedule, see the doctor before anybody else, and get out of there in a timely fashion when it's wait a second, we literally have a schedule for a reason. So for her to walk up and be like, "Oh, I'm just asking a quick question, it's no big deal." That is so obnoxious and it's so annoying because it honestly is giving me flashbacks to when that happened to me. So good for you for pointing out that she didn't check in and basically making her wait longer than she probably wanted to. Because trust me, this entitled Karen absolutely deserves this treatment. Today, I caught a group that was dining and dashing from our restaurant, leaving before they even could pay the $200 tab we had for their table. Things were so bad that they literally came up with every excuse under the sun as to why they didn't pay when they were at the restaurant, leaving me completely flabbergasted by their awful behavior. Here's how it went down. So today, my coworker had a dine and dash dash on a $200 table. We were just coming off of a super busy dinner service when he noticed that one of his tables was nowhere to be found. He was very panicked, so I helped him go through his receipts to see if maybe he had cashed them out and just forgot, or if maybe they had actually left. There was no cash on the table, no billfold, and no receipts that matched what their total bill was. Since I had just been cut and had no open tables, I decided to check other restaurants and bars on our street and actually found them at a bar not too far away. I had a chat with the bar manager and I showed him proof that we had no payment from them. So he confronted them while I waited outside with security. They eventually came out and tried to argue that their bill was paid for, but I showed them all the same information I showed the bar manager, and one of the ladies tried to justify why they had left, claiming they waited for 30 minutes for their bill, but nobody came to check them out. They apparently tried to get our attention to pay and all this other garbage, but I simply said that theft is theft, and that there were two other servers that could have easily gotten their bill if they were actually finished, instead of leaving without paying. I had even brought them a round of drinks when my coworker was busy with another table, and I had other tables around them, so it's not like they didn't have a server nearby that they could have spoken to. The lady even said, "Well, you're lucky we came here and didn't just go home," to which I said, "Oh, well, you're lucky I haven't called my boss or the cops to handle this." It's important to note that this table had made a reservation, so we had their information in our books and could have easily just tracked them down with police assistance. Thankfully, I was able to get back what was owed and bring it back to my coworker after 10 minutes of back and forth between me, the group, and the bar staff and security. They were then promptly kicked out and banned from both the bar and our restaurant. Now, I've had dine and dashes before, but never anything over $100, let alone $200 at most. I'm happy I was able to get the money for my coworker, and also grateful that this group was stupid enough to walk to another bar down the street. I know situations where dine and dashes actually get caught are pretty rare, so I definitely feel like the universe was on our side for this one. Dude, you guys got so lucky. This is crazy. First of all, that's awesome that you literally chased these people down and had the instincts to be like, okay, let me check around locally before I get the cops involved. Because you hit the nail on the head. You easily could have gone to the cops and reported this. Then it would have been a whole world of pain. So when she was trying to be condescending and be like, oh, you're lucky we didn't just go home, it's like, dude, you would have been in even more trouble if you did go home. Like, you're an idiot for thinking that's a good solution here, especially since the restaurant has your information and probably a picture of you from like security footage or something like that. So truly, good for you for putting these idiots in their place, because this level of disrespect is absolutely uncalled for. Am I the jerk for supposedly giving my mother-in-law an attitude when she kicked our stuff out of the house over a silly argument? Because right now she is still trying to hold this over my head, and honestly, I am incredibly frustrated by it. Here's what's going on. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, long distance because of the military. I've lived with his family during this time, renting out a space, and my mother-in-law had really welcomed me and I loved living there. Meanwhile, she's been in the long-term process of divorcing her husband, staying until now for financial reasons. The last months of my time there, I was nearing the end of my pregnancy and my husband was preparing to deploy. It had been determined that I would move back in with my parents with the baby so that my parents could help out with childcare. My mother-in-law offered for me and my husband to keep our stuff in the room upstairs as free storage until he's back from deployment and we get our own place. Now, I offered to pay her for it multiple times, but she declined. When things were getting more heated between her and her husband, approximately 6 weeks before my due date and my husband's deployment date, I asked if she wanted us to move our stuff to an actual storage place, and she said no, our stuff could stay. Well, 2 weeks after a C-section and 36 hours from my husband's deployment, we were about to drive over with the baby to my family's house. Now, my mother-in-law and father-in-law had an ongoing argument, essentially about my father-in-law wanting to move out because they were fighting so much, and my mother-in-law wanting him to stay to help out with a planned surgery she had. My father-in-law also told her that he wasn't going to financially support her unless he was forced to do so, but she asked my husband to take sides with her and force my father-in-law to stay. My husband told her he wasn't comfortable getting in the middle of things, and that's when my mother-in-law became upset and suddenly told us that if he wouldn't help her in this argument, then we should move all of our stuff out as soon as possible because according to her, she might have to sell the house. Now, I expressed that it was a lot for her to throw on us, mainly me, all of a sudden, and there was no yelling involved, but that night she sent a lengthy text message about how he and I were extremely selfish and that we were not considering her situation, and then laid out all the kinds of things that she's done for us, with her asking how we could ever treat her this way. I reached out to try and talk, and she texted me she wasn't sure she'd ever be able to forgive us, but would still listen to what we had to say. Later on, she changed her mind and said she didn't want to talk after all. So now our stuff is in storage. I recently stopped by the house to pick up leftover stuff, and prior to going, I had asked, and she had texted that we were welcome to stop by anytime. However, she ignored my greetings when we arrived. She refused to see the baby when I offered, and yelled at me when I told her that I wasn't comfortable going over either, but I just wanted her to have a chance to see the grandbaby. This time, I did yell back about how she was calling me inconsiderate when she was also not considerate of my situation when she dropped the move on us like that. She texted my husband that she's upset with me for my attitude the original night, as well as for this latest visit, and is now claiming that I am emotionally mistreating her. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now this feels incredibly overblown. Dude, your mother-in-law is absolutely playing the victim, and yet she's the one who started all of this. She freaked out and said, "You can either take my side for this argument, or else you're just gonna have to find a new place for your crap." And she only did that because she knows she has some kind of like leverage over you, and that is obnoxious. Like, that is crazy in my opinion. It is super entitled to act that way because she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get brownie points by having more people on my side." And your husband's right, dude. Like, why would you ever want to get in the middle of that? I know I definitely wouldn't. That sounds like a nightmare. Like, seriously, this sounds so stupid. Like, how on earth are you supposed to like get involved and fix that situation? So no, you're not the jerk, and you definitely did not give an attitude of any kind. Anything she's trying to claim is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, and I would not pay that lady any attention any longer. An entitled jerk literally cuts in front of an entire line of senior citizens just so he can get his stuff and get out sooner than everybody else. So I decided to get some revenge by literally taking the butane gas he was planning on buying, thus essentially ruining his camping trip altogether. Here's how I did it. So this happened a few days ago at a grocery store. I was waiting patiently in my lane, and beside me was the priority lane for senior citizens. There were a couple of elderly people sitting on the chairs provided specifically for them while waiting for their turn. And this was a pretty normal setup, but this is where some guy just casually walks up and cuts right in front of the seated seniors. I speak up and I say, "Hey, they're already in line." And this guy, without even looking at me, says, "Well, I don't see them standing in line though." And he said this really smug and dismissively. The elderly folks looked uncomfortable but didn't want to cause a scene, so I shut up and I just simmered. A few minutes later, we were still in the lanes, and I noticed his cart is stacked with what looks like camping gear, such as a sleeping bag, paper plates, marshmallows, instant noodles, a portable stove, etc. And then that's when I spotted it, a single can of butane gas. And it's right there that I saw an opportunity. The guy's blabbering on the phone, totally distracted. So I casually leaned over, plucked the butane from his cart, and I slid it into mine. And you know what? He didn't notice. He checked out and left, and I paid for my stuff, including his butane, and I walked away. So somewhere out there, this man arrived at his campsite, probably boasting about how smart and quick he is. And when he tried to fire up that portable stove, he had no gas, no hot food, and no hot coffee. Just crunchy noodles and hopefully the sweet taste of consequences. Oh man, this guy's a massive jerk. Imagine being such a big piece of crap that you literally go ahead of senior citizens and try to be like, "Well, they're not standing in line, so what are they gonna do about it?" Like, that takes an entirely different level of like, "Oh yeah, you're a piece of crap," like an actual piece of crap, and there's just no good excuse. So I'm right there with the original poster. I hope they have the worst camping trip ever after they realize they don't have their butane gas, because this kind of behavior is completely uncalled for, and there literally was no reason to act like that. Am I the jerk for asking my neighbor to move their little farm stand away from my driveway, as it's literally encouraging people to steal from my garden? Here's what's going on. Okay, so my neighbors set up one of those pantries or farm stands where people can take items that they grew in their garden, or grab some pantry stuff or some donated stuff. In theory, it's a great idea, and especially in a time when life in America really sucks and people are struggling to make ends meet, my family included. But the problem is that people started coming into my yard to pick things in my garden. I put up signs saying not to do it. I installed a rabbit fence around my garden. I've even angled a tarp so you can't see what's there from the road. But people just hold their kids over the fence to pick tomatoes and beans or just jump it. I ended up getting into an argument with a lady over it. I yelled, "Hey, stop, those are not for you to take." But she told her kid to move faster and then tried to run away. I then caught up with her and I asked her what in the world her problem was, and she turned it into some situation where she's like, "Oh my gosh, how dare you swear in front of my child? Why are you so angry? Are you really that upset about a couple of tomatoes?" Well, I said I am upset because you're stealing from me. The very next day, I approached my neighbor. I asked if she could maybe help me move it to the other side of the driveway so it's next to the other neighbor's house instead. They don't have a garden out front, but they said at least not until the end of the season. I asked if they could make a larger sign or talk to people, but please just do something. Well, they were like, "Can you really not afford to share?" And I said that they're not taking my zucchini because they're starving. They're taking my tomatoes because they want them. They said that I'm gonna have to learn to live with it for now, and that we can talk about a solution together that will benefit the whole community afterwards. But I said I do not care about a solution that benefits the whole community. I care about a solution that stops people from stealing from me. So last night it happened again with a man in his 50s. I sprayed his butt with a hose and he started yelling at me, and after a minute or so, the neighbor came out yelling at me too. People have now posted on the neighborhood board to be careful if they come by because I'm a jerk. The neighbor says I'm scaring people away from a community resource, and I told him I'm going to continue to do so until he does something about about the thieves who feel entitled to my garden. I feel like I'm losing my mind right now. Am I the jerk for asking them to move it? Am I the jerk for being pissed off that people are stealing from me? Like, this is food for my family, and I feel like I'm going crazy. And at this point, I seriously just don't know what to do. Okay, first of all, I need to get some updates because this is kind of a crazy situation. They start off by saying that no, they can't really talk to the cops because apparently where they live, the cops are not going to do anything about this. They basically say they'll be laughed at, and that is just not a feasible solution. They also said like a bigger fence is out of the question because they simply cannot afford it. And they said that getting a bigger sign saying, hey, I'm using a lot of pesticides on my food might be their only solution that they're going for. They also say they're going to look for like free fencing on Craigslist or something like that. But regardless, honestly, this would drive me insane. If I had a neighbor who was seriously encouraging this and being like, oh, come on, you have to share. This is for the community. It'd be like, dude, yeah, your crap's for the community, but my garden is for my family. It's not meant for anyone to walk up and take as they please, dude. You can't just steal from me and expect me to be okay with it. Like, what's going on right now? This is so dumb. If I was in this situation, I would find some friends and I would move it myself in the middle of the night. Like, I would get that as far away from my garden as possible because these neighbors are essentially like encouraging this kind of behavior. They're saying, yes, this is okay and we want you to have your garden stolen from. And that is unacceptable. That really sucks. So hopefully some kind of solution comes down the pipeline for you because this sounds absolutely obnoxious.
A Karen buys enough of our product to get a $10 coupon. It gets sent to the wrong address, so we offer to give her a $25 coupon as an apology. But that isn't enough. She loses it and ends up suing my company, and in the process loses $2,000. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This story is from a few years ago when I worked in the legal department of a 1,000 plus store national retailer. As a part of my job, I handled customer complaints at Elevated when the customer threatened legal action. Our customer service center forwarded Karen's call to me after she threatened to take legal action. Karen left a message claiming that she was not provided $10 in customer reward coupons, where you spend $200 and receive $10 in coupons in the mail sort of thing. This was before apps, based on her purchase of clothing for her son and daughter for back to school. I looked into it and I called Karen back. It turned out we had an old address associated with her rewards account. No big deal, right? Well, I spoke to Karen and offered to send her the original $10 coupon and an additional $25 for her trouble to the correct address. That did not satisfy Karen. She claimed we should have known her address and threatened to sue us if we didn't pay her $1,000 cash. Her rationale was that it would cost us at least $1,000 to defend the suit. She was in a state which our company did not have any offices, so we should just pay it to her. I declined, but still forwarded her the $10 coupon that she was entitled to pursuant to our rewards program. Sure enough, she sued us for breach of contract, fraud, and any other conceivable charge. I went to my boss, the COO, and I told him this story. He asked what I wanted to do. I said I'd rather pay legal fees to a defense attorney than pay Karen $1,000, and he agreed. I contacted outside counsel, our awesome attorney, explained the situation to him, and I kid you not, he said in a southern drawl,
"Oh yeah, I get to sue Karen? I should be paying you guys." There are a lot of lawyers in the legal community who would love to sue her, as she is reckless, unpleasant, and a total pain in the behind to deal with. I'll gladly take your case.
He agreed to defend us at a reduced rate. Part of our defense strategy was to countersue her under the state's frivolous lawsuit statute, which would move the suit from small claims court into the larger civil court. Awesome attorney filed our answer and counterclaim. Although Karen was an attorney, she was not a defense attorney, so she had to engage her own attorney to defend against the counterclaim. After a couple of hearings, she offered to settle for no more money exchanged. She didn't even get the extra $25 coupon that I offered her, and the dismissal of both suits. I talked with Awesome Attorney about continuing our claim, but he advised it would probably be worth settling and being done with it rather than being vindictive. Although being vindictive would have been fun, courts tend not to like that, so I agreed. My company ended up paying the Awesome Attorney $900 in attorney fees. The Awesome Attorney later called and told us that the Karen attorney charged her $1,700 to defend the suit. Although I would have liked to continue with our suit, I think her having to pay $1,700 over a $10 coupon sent to the wrong address is sufficient justice. Was I the jerk? Getting offered the original $25 coupon is pretty good because it was an addition to the original $10 coupon. So even if it wasn't, that would still be 2.5 times what you were supposed to get, but it was that plus the original $10 coupon, which I think for most people getting $35 for free in exchange for this promo is a pretty good deal, but not this person. She wanted the $1,000 in cash and it totally blew up in her face. So instead of taking $35 free dollars, she spent the $200 originally, paid $1,700 to defend herself, and then of course didn't get the $35 that she was supposed to get in the first place before going down this route. So all in all, she went basically almost negative $2,000 instead of just getting the free money from the coupon. It's interesting that the attorney already knew exactly who she was and was eager to want to jump in on this and try to sue her. So it makes me wonder, what did she do in the past to make him dislike her that much before even knowing about this scenario? So let me know how you would have handled this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. The client is not always right. A sexist client gets recorded and canned from his cushy, high-paying job that he didn't deserve. Here's how. I work at a big ad agency with large companies as our clients. We expect to work in partnership with our clients. We fire clients that treat us poorly. Usually we treat each other with respect. Our biggest client has 5 different teams we work with, and one of them was led by Baseball Dad. Baseball Dad was the type of necklace marshmallow who gets wasted at his kid's baseball game and starts heckling the other kids. Just a boorish jerk. He never approved any of our work, putting out awful stuff that his internal team made, even though he's paying us literally millions of dollars to make ads for him. His product was struggling to sell and he blamed us, even though we were killing it with the other 4 teams. He didn't know this, which comes back to bite him later. However, none of this is why we needed revenge. I don't care if a client wants to fail. I collect my paycheck regardless. But he crossed several lines. Number 1, he was extremely sexist. He used to call my female coworkers sweetheart in the most condescending voice, comment on their clothes and bodies, and wink and smirk at me while they were talking because we are both men, I guess. These women are highly accomplished, serious people, and they are like family to me. A huge misplay on his part. Number 2, Baseball Dad was abusive to us. He would constantly interrupt us, tell us to shut up, call us vendors, and remind us that he could fire us at any time. Number 3, Baseball Dad would lie. He would tell his boss, an actual nice guy but too busy to check closely, that we missed deadlines or forgot deliverables because he never checked his email. We would then have to awkwardly struggle to prove Baseball Dad wrong without calling him a liar so that we could keep the business. He never owned up to anything that he said to us on the phone. And lastly, number 4, the final straw took place on a call between Baseball Dad and one of my project managers. I saw her run out of a room crying. She told me Baseball Dad said to her in a one-on-one call that she should worry less about budgets and more about wearing that nice top that she wore at our last presentation. Gross. Revenge time. I told my cool boss that our team had enough of Baseball Dad. We were at our wits' end with his nonsense. Several of my coworkers were looking for new jobs. It's hard to hire good people, so my boss asked me to give her a day to figure this out. She wanted to lose Baseball Dad without the entire business. The next day, she showed up with our IT guy who set up voice recording on our conference line. It's illegal to record people without consent in my state, but Baseball Dad was late to every call. Too bad, because if he ever had showed up on time, he would have heard the new message kicking off every call. This call is recorded. His team heard it and had no problem with it. I suspect they hated him too. For the next 2 weeks, we recorded everything, every word of it. One of my audio engineers made a supercut of every terrible thing Baseball Dad said. Every sweetheart, shut up, no one cares what you think. My project manager even baited him into repeating what he said about her clothes on a budget call. This time, he literally said,
"You're much better at flirting than budget, sweetheart. That's why I like you."
The supercut sounded insane when we played it all together. It was an incredible piece of evidence. We sent it to his boss and his vice president and threatened to walk away from the work 2 weeks before product launch if Baseball Dad wasn't disciplined. They immediately apologized and begged us not to leave. They said it would be handled by Monday. My one sweet project manager had been so grossed out she got to do the best part of the revenge. She anonymously sent the supercut to his wife using the email address she had posted on LinkedIn. I don't know what became of that, but I imagine it wasn't good. On Monday, Baseball Dad wasn't on the call. My boss snooped and found out that he had a few complaints prior and got immediately canned after we sent it through. He didn't see vendors as people, so he was shocked that his words towards us counted against his third strike policy. Apparently, he melted down completely as he was being fired. He said it was all because we were incompetent, but the other 4 team leads had all put in their numbers and said that it wasn't on our end. Their products were slaying. Wish I could have seen it. I imagine he came home to a a very angry wife as well. We're all hitting the bar tonight in his honor. Thanks, baseball dad. Well played indeed. I'm sure that this supercut actually does probably sound insane. When you combine everything he said over a long period of time, it's gonna sound pretty wild no matter what, since we already know some of the expressions that he tends to use. It's always weird when somebody has a job to do but they can't help but let certain aspects of their personality bleed into the work when nobody wants that, nobody asked for that. So do you think this revenge was just right, or do you think it was going too far? Since he ended up losing his job, the wife situation, and everything beyond. Let me know down below. My girlfriend cheated on me with the guy in the next room while I was forced to sit there and listen. So I got her arrested, made her lose her job, and got all of her friends to abandon her. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Here's the background. Me and my ex had been together just about a year and had decided to move in together for this most recent semester of university when we began to have a lot of fights and were on rocky terms for a little while. In this time, she would take advantage of my insecurities and my kindness just so she would get more attention while not giving any back to me. Most of our conversations at this point were apologetic or were trying to fix these problems, or at least I thought. Whenever I tried to talk to her in person, she would get hyper defensive and too emotional to deal with the facts that I was telling her. Thus, she would leave and message me over Discord and Snapchat saying these horrible things to me only meant to tear me down and adding in a few maybe we should break ups for good measure. One night I had enough and said that it would be best to take a break and try to figure it out from a third person perspective what was wrong in our relationship. Not 2 days later, she brought someone else over to our apartment to do. This decimated me, leading me to have a mental and emotional breakdown while they were doing the deed in the other room. I had mutual friends get me out of our place for the night where I explained the situation to them. They hated her for what she had done to me, and all of them cut contact with her right on the spot, which I later found out was a major hit to her ego. But that is not even the best part. Then the guy that she banged came to me and apologized for what had happened. He explained he felt bad for what he did and that he was told we had been separated for 2 weeks and was doing that the whole time, and that her wanting to do him was the reason for her last breakup before me. And he came to tell me because now she's going to go do his friend. Of course, rage ensues, but for some reason not towards him, but a plan did pop into my head. College student apartments, at least around here, all sign in mid-February, and I took my chance. I gathered a group of 4 of her once friends and we all signed the lease together, kicking her out of the apartment entirely. She has until the end of the month to find somewhere else to live. So I got out of this toxic relationship with all of her friends and I kicked her out of her own apartment. So I hope that eggplant tasted nice. This was all from my last post about 2 weeks ago. After getting her off the lease, she tried to get a replacement for the time she still had here, subleasing for her room in the apartment, which is strictly not allowed in the contract we signed at the beginning of last year. By this point, she had gone full psycho, threatening people in our apartment, including herself, to the point where a roommate called for a wellness check on her, mentally abusing the other roommates, and all around it was horrible. So I went to the landlady to get some information on what she could do next, where I got some information about what she had to do to get out of the apartment and away from what she had done to me. So I leave these papers saying that she legally can't sublet and suffer legal consequences if she does. She loses it completely and begins to yell at me for intruding in her life and ruining everything, even though she was the one that did it to herself. This escalates to her yelling at me about an inch from my face, to which I stand up to get her away from me, and she strikes me. She slugs me in the face with so much anger, and that was the last straw. I built up the courage and went to the police and filed a report with a witness, and they, without me knowing until afterwards, arrested her on the spot. She's been charged with battery and now forced into a psychiatric ward for mental health monitoring. The police then allowed me to fill out a protection order / restraining order against her, giving me the grounds to forcefully evict her from the apartment complex and notify her employer of what happened, leading her to get fired the next day. She is the only person who I can safely say is dead to me, and if you ever read this, Brooke, I hope you burn in hell. So, am I the jerk? This is really sad that somebody would have to go through this and experience how how horrible this would be. It sounds like his intentions were in the right place when he wanted to have this little break for a separation, but it didn't sound like he wanted the break to be something for them both to go hook up with other people. The way that he described it made it sound like he just wanted some space to think for a second, but she obviously didn't see it that way, and she took the opportunity to get with this other guy in the same apartment in the next room over. That is low. An entitled mother shreds my $30 Magic the Gathering card because I wouldn't give it to her 10-year-old son. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I'm a 21-year-old male and I was at the local game shop today to sell my Magic the Gathering card. This happened yesterday. I had just finished talking to the owner to sell my card when the entitled mom walked up to the counter I was at with her son.
You should give that card to my son. You're too old to play with cards.
Ma'am, if you had approached me earlier, I would have either traded or sold the card to him, but I've already made a deal with this store.
No, you're an adult. You should just give this card to my son.
At this point, I look at her young son. He's a young kid. I should also mention that the card I'm selling is a foil Olivia Crimson Bride showcase. For those that don't know, this card shows a lot of cleavage for a Magic the Gathering card. Ma'am, how old is your son?
He's 10. How old are you?
I'm 21 years old. I also don't think this card is appropriate for his age. I show her the card to make my point.
No, it's fine. Just give it to him.
As I already said, I can't do that as I already committed to selling this shop my card. At this point, the store owner cuts me off. Ma'am, if you want this card, you can buy it from us.
No! If my son can't have this card, then you can't have it either.
At this point, she grabs the card from my hand and then all I hear is the sound of the card ripping. I look at this woman and the card torn in her hands. I start tearing into her, cursing her out. While I'm doing this, the store owner calls the police. They arrive 5 minutes later. The first thing the cops do is separate me and the entitled mom before getting our statements. The owner also decides to pull the video of the incident. After the police have talked with me and the owner, they are now starting to talk with the entitled mom. Once they finish talking with her, they walk out of the store and one of the officers talks to me and the owner. He tells us that the woman is going to be escorted from the premises, and if the owner wants, they will be trespassed and no longer allowed at the store. This is when the owner says that he would like to do that, and the woman has caused issues for him in the past. The cop also says that the woman has been given a ticket for destruction of private property and disturbing the peace. The owner of the store then tells me that he will be going after this woman in court. He also gave me money for my card so that way he can add it onto the amount that he's trying to go after her for or claim it on his insurance. He told me that he's going to try and sue her for harassments because she has done this in the past. The value of the card that she destroyed and any legal fees needed to take her to court. So should I have just given her the card? This story is particularly interesting to me because Magic the Gathering is probably my most played game, especially at the moment. I know exactly the card that he's talking about here, and this is really weird that she just wants the kid to have this card even though he doesn't even seem like he's interested in this card. I mean, the kid didn't even ask for this card. The mom just wants to give it to him. And also, she's in a local game shop, so of course there's going to be 21-year-old guys playing Magic the Gathering and other games there. That's the point of this shop. It's not a kid's store. This card isn't the most expensive card of all time, but still, nobody wants to have their property taken from them and ripped in front of their face when they're about to receive money for that property. He says at the time the card was worth $30, which is not a cheap card either. I know some of you guys probably would have gone buck wild if this happened to you as you were in the process of selling your cards, but let me know what you would have done if this was your card in this situation down below. And also, this is a good time to mention that the Am I the Jerk Discord server is now live. The link will be in the description so you can come by, discuss the stories, submit your stories, and there's even a magic section. Am I the jerk for not wanting to attend a Game of Thrones themed wedding? My friend Lexa is getting married soon. She and her husband are extreme Game of Thrones fans. They've watched the show 5+ times. Their house is decked out with Game of Thrones themed decorations, accessories, etc. Because of their shared love of Game of Thrones, Lexa and her fiance decided to have a Game of Thrones themed wedding. I am perfectly fine with the idea of a themed wedding. I'm even okay with the Game of Thrones dress and costume for the wedding. The only thing I can't seem to get behind is the fact that the majority of the wedding will be conducted in High Valyrian. For those that don't know, it's a made-up language from Game of Thrones. Her wedding is also a destination wedding, and I'm finding it hard to justify going out of my way to go to a wedding that's not even in a real language that I wouldn't be able to understand at all. I mentioned that I was having doubts to Lexa, and she got really mad at me because I had originally said I could go before I knew it was in High Valyrian. She's also been sending me links to learn High Valyrian Valerian on Duolingo, and I feel like even if I did show up, she would be mad at me for not learning this language. The reception will also be in High Valerian, and all the speeches and toasts are expected to be in High Valerian too. So would I be the jerk for not wanting to go to her Game of Thrones themed wedding? This actually sounds awesome. I would be much more interested to go to this wedding over pretty much any other wedding ever, as long as it doesn't turn out to be the red wedding, or the theme is specifically that of the red wedding. All you got to do is look at the playlist and see if they put Reigns of Castamere on there, and if not, you're good to go. About learning High Valerian on Duolingo, apparently that's an actual thing. They really do offer High Valerian as a language you can learn on Duolingo, which is strange because there's a lot of real-world languages that Duolingo doesn't have, but I guess maybe High Valerian is more popular than a lot of those real languages. So as long as she's not committing to giving one of these speeches in High Valerian, this will be an awesome experience. But how do you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for taking my friend to court after she kicked me out of the bridal party for cutting my hair? For my friend's 3-day wedding, I had to buy 3 different dresses, including alterations, and specific shoes which totaled over $700. She also wanted specific hairstyles for each day. Unfortunately, starting in March, my hair started to deteriorate. Due to health reasons, my hair was falling out in chunks, and in May, I made the difficult decision to cut my hair. I told the bride about my decision 2 weeks before the wedding, and she didn't say anything bad. The following week, she came over to my house, and when she was about to leave, she brought up that she was concerned about my haircut, and I told her it would look good, even though it wouldn't be uniform with the other bridesmaids. The following day, I received this message. After our recent conversations, I'd like to remind you of my boundaries. I've been very accommodating and graceful, but I can't allow you to disrespect me. As you know, my wedding is something I've dreamt of for many years. My husband and I have invested a lot of money into the video and photos of this day, and as we reflect on this day in the future, we want to see our vision reflected in the memories. Since I asked each of you to be bridesmaids in 2019, I've been very clearly and very communicative in my request. The timing of your decision to cut your hair and not inform me in advance is very upsetting to me. I would have felt respected if you had communicated with me more than a week prior to the wedding, so we could have worked together to find a collaborative solution. Your inconsistencies have concerned me, and while I sympathize with your health concerns, I'm not willing to compromise my vision to accommodate you or anyone else when you could have informed me in advance, and we could have found a better solution. Since this is something you can no longer fully commit to, I need you to please step down from participating in my wedding. This was 3 days before the wedding. I immediately sent her and her husband an invoice asking them to reimburse for the dresses and shoes, keeping in mind that one of the dresses is still in her possession even though I paid for it. Neither of them replied, and I decided to take it to court. I was told I was inconsistent and selfish after I spent the past 2 weeks helping her plan the wedding shower. I worked with another bridesmaid to surprise her with a wedding shower after our bachelorette trip had to be canceled. I spent hours helping her out with wedding details. When she asked me to help her tone up before the wedding, I sent her a personalized workout program and even went with her to the gym to show her the ropes. When I agreed to be her bridesmaid, I said I was more than willing to oblige with what she asked, even if at times it was a lot of time and money. So am I the jerk for taking her to court because she kicked me out for cutting my hair? Wow, this friend, the bride who's getting married here, seems very heartless based on everything that we've seen here. The OP made a commitment to this wedding before she knew this whole health concern was going to happen, and now her hair is falling out in clumps. That's not something anyone chooses to have happen to them. What other choice did the OP have here? She didn't want her hair to fall out in clumps, but somehow the bride is interpreting that as a form of disrespect to her and her husband for their wedding. I'm sure the OP is already burdened with the sadness or just any emotions that have to do with dealing with this on her own before having the finger pointed at her saying that she's the one who disrespected the whole wedding by not sticking to the plan. Would it have softened things a bit if the OP would have went to the bride and said, hey, my hair is going in this direction because of my health issues before cutting the hair? That might have helped a little bit, but that probably wasn't the first thing on the OP's mind when this was happening. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if the outcome ended up being the exact same. But let me know how you would handle the situation down below. Do you think that suing the bride for the $700 that's owed is going too far right before her wedding? Or do you think it's justified because she spent all this money out of pocket and now for a reason outside of her control, she's not even able to use the dress and shoes that she got for this wedding? Let me know your thoughts down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for not attending my sister's wedding after telling her that I would go? My 34-year-old sister got married last week. When she got engaged 6 months ago, she told me she wanted me to be a bridesmaid. I agreed, how could I not? The other other bridesmaids were all pretty rich. Sis and groom weren't planning to hold back on anything when it came to the wedding because they had a pretty big budget. The groom's from a wealthy family. There wasn't a problem until 3 months before the wedding when she and her friends, the other bridesmaids, were picking out dresses. The dresses cost $300 each and they were so pretty. They were pastel pink with yellow embroidered roses on them, handmade. I am a 21-year-old female and I'm a college student and I'm broke. I couldn't afford a dress that cost that much, especially since I was only going to wear it once. I told my sister immediately. So she said she'd pay $150 and I could pay the rest myself. She sent me the money, and since there were still 3 months before the wedding, she said I had to salvage something. Now, $150, that's like 2 weeks worth of groceries. I decided to keep the money she'd given to me myself because I sure as heck wasn't going to spend another $150 on some dress. My sister never asked me about the dress again until a week before the wedding. I told her I hadn't bought it and spent it on things that I actually needed. She was pissed, saying there wasn't enough time to order a new dress. She told me that I couldn't be a bridesmaid without it. I didn't show up to the wedding for obvious reasons. She called me after, asking me where I was and calling me a jerk and a liar. What did I do that was even remotely jerkish? I'm broke and there's no way I could afford such an expensive dress. Am I the jerk? Huh? Why didn't the OP here just tell the sister, hey, $150 is not enough money. I don't have enough money for the rest of the dress. If that was the case, maybe then there would have been some sort of solution, but she just basically took the money and spent it on whatever she wanted and didn't say anything until it was too late? How could you possibly have justified that? If the sister didn't want to pay the full $300 amount, the other $150, at least give her back the money that she gave you. How could you possibly interpret that to mean, oh, I guess I get to keep this $150? What's probably ended up happening here is the OP has permanently severed, or if not severed, at least damaged the relationship with her sister for life here. Not necessarily because of the money only, but also because, as the sister said, she's a liar. She lied about the whole situation. She made her think that she was going to buy the dress with the money, and not only did she not do that, but she kept the money without saying anything. And now returning the money is probably not going to even be enough to solve this because the wedding has come and gone. It's too late to make up for it. There's not going to be a second wedding. If this was your sister and she did this to you, how would you respond to this? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for throwing away my pad at an acquaintance's house? I met a dude on Tinder a few weeks ago and we really seemed to hit it off. We had a lot of the same hobbies and I felt a spark between us that I'm sure he felt too. After we got past the talking phase, we decided to meet at his house for coffee. It was great when I arrived. We talked loads and even held hands. However, I was on the third day of my cycle, and after a couple of hours I needed to change my pad. I asked for the bathroom and he directs me towards it. After I finished changing, I noticed that his trash can is pretty full. I'm not sure what to do, so I wrap it in toilet paper and sort of smooth it into the trash so it isn't sitting on the edge. We hang out for about an hour more and he excuses himself to the bathroom. A few minutes pass by and he comes out and says that he needs to talk to me. He says I shouldn't have thrown away my pad because he might touch it when taking out the trash and that it was gross and unsanitary. Apparently, he saw that the trash looked different, unwrapped the toilet paper, and saw my used pad. I was mortified. I apologized profusely, and he seemed to take it well. He just told me not to do it again, and if I needed to, just walk a few blocks away to a nearby grocery store to change. I left after that, not thinking too much about it. However, I've recounted the events to a few friends, and they think he is a major jerk. I'm not entirely sure. He was really kind about it and didn't seem to get angry, but also I'm starting to see their point too. It's just a normal body process for people with a uterus, and I agree. It should be more normalized. I'm just not sure what to think, and any judgment would be greatly appreciated. Am I the jerk? This is just a normal bodily function. It's not like she took it and smeared it all over the walls and threw it on the ground. She put it in a trash bin where trash goes. And assuming that he has a small trash bag in his bathroom trash can, the only possible reason why he would end up touching it by accident is because his trash is overflowing because he hasn't emptied it. But if he doesn't have a bag, then that trash bin is probably already pretty disgusting to begin with. The OP here says that he was kind about it, so that's obviously better than the alternative of him coming out raging and screaming about this, but clearly this bothered him. I just don't really get why. Let me know down below if something like this would bother you, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for putting a Ziploc bag of my roommate's poop on his bed after he pooped in the bidet? I'm in a university and have been living in a house with 4 of my friends, all 21 or 22-year-old males, for 4 years. We are all great friends and get along well most of the time. However, our one roommate, Darren, is quite messy. Darren regularly runs a tornado tomato through the house after it's just been cleaned and leaves rotting food everywhere. We share the bathroom upstairs and he never cleans it. He also does stupid things while sloshed and doesn't take responsibility. Last year he threw out a perfectly good blender because he got so puffed up that he forgot to plug it in before turning it on and therefore thought it was broken. When called out on his behavior, Darren will usually deny it or make excuses. He used to not be so bad, but his irresponsible behavior has escalated over the past year. Yesterday, however, is where I drew the line. On Thursday night, Darren had a couple of friends over and they got sloshed. The rest of my roommates weren't home. I had to get up at 6 a.m. for work, so I asked them to keep it down. They didn't, but I managed to fall asleep despite the noise. Sometime in the night, I woke up to them talking near my room. I heard Darren say something about him pooping in the bidet. My bedroom is beside the washroom, but I was half asleep and I figured I heard wrong. I just fell back to sleep. On Friday morning, I woke up for work and there was a turd in the bidet. I wasn't about to clean it, especially not at 6 a.m. I thought maybe he was just incredibly sloshed and he'd clean it up when he woke up. When I got back to my house around 7 p.m. though, the turd was still in the bidet. I knew Darren was home because I could hear him gaming in his room. Also, the shower had clearly been used, meaning he showered with his turd in the bidet. I knew he was going to leave soon, so when he did, I put on some gloves, put his poop in a bag, and put it on his pillow. When he got home later that night, he was really upset and yelling about how gross it was that I put poop on his pillow. I told him it was gross of him not only to poop in our bidet, but to leave it there for a whole day. I also argued that I could have put the poop directly on his pillow, but I didn't. He said that he would have cleaned it up eventually and that I should have just texted him first. He put the bag of turd back in the bidet again just to prove a point, and now we're at a crossroads. It's sitting in the bidet as I type this, and he says if I don't apologize, he'll put it in my bed. Two of our roommates and my girlfriend are on my side and say that he had it coming and shouldn't have been such a pig. My other two roommates think that I took it too far and should have just texted him to clean up his poop first, which makes me think that maybe I could be the jerk. But I think he should have just done it on his own. I am not his mother. All things considered, am I the jerk? This would have been an easy everyone is the jerk in this situation, but the scales were tipped towards Darren being the jerk when he took the poop back and put it in the bidet again. What's the next step after this? They start picking up the poop and throwing it at each other like monkeys? Obviously, pooping in the bidet was wrong, and he was laughing about it or joking about it sounds like. Then the OP takes the poop and puts it on his pillow, which is also wrong, but then he takes it and puts it back? Regardless of who's the jerk or not in this situation, the OP taking the poop and putting it on the pillow did not solve anything at all. It just made this whole situation worse, because now he has people in the house that are not even on his side because they think he went too far. Whereas if he just would have said, hey, why did you do this? Pretty much no one in the house would not agree that that was a pretty messed up thing to do. If you came home one day and you found out that your roommate put poop on your pillow in a little Ziploc bag, how would you react? Let me know down below on jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for being uncomfortable with my girlfriend being naked around her dog? I'm a 33-year-old male and my girlfriend who's 30 hates clothes, to the point where she actively researched nudist colonies, and if it wasn't for her having to occasionally go to the office, she would have moved there long before she met me. So of course, she's always naked around the house, which for me is nice. She's got a rockin' bod. The issue is her 2-year-old dog. The dog is a super cute and fluffy Great Pyrenees, very well trained, 10 out of 10, a good girl. My girlfriend was there when her friend brought the heavily pregnant mom home from the pound, was there at the birth, and fell in love immediately. She sees that dog as the closest thing she'll ever have to a kid due to medical issues. However, my girlfriend is just always naked at home, playing with the dog, naked, cuddling on the couch, naked. She keeps a slip dress by the door for walks, but otherwise naked. And it's weird, right? I tried to be subtle, but the other day I finally sat down with her and pointed out that yes, she's trained the dog not to sniff human butts, but it's still like something out of an illegal adult movie for her to be naked with an animal all the time. Wow, she got pissed, asking me to leave. I tried talking sense into her, but she wasn't listening to it. I finally left her house, and once I got back to my apartment, I tried texting one of her friends, but she blew up at me saying that I was a jerk. My girlfriend is now radio silent. I'm not jealous of a literal female dog. I know my girlfriend isn't doing anything, but it's still weird. I do see being naked is that way, since the only times that I'm naked are when I'm showering or, well, doing the deed. I respect that my girlfriend doesn't feel the same way, but I'll get up to use the bathroom or something and come back to the dog in my spot on the couch, asleep with her head on my girlfriend's naked thigh. That's just so weird. How is it not? So am I the jerk? It's not that weird. As the OP already said here, she's not doing anything weird weird with the dog. And what did the OP think we were doing back in hunter and gatherer times, that we're always fully clothed from head to toe, that there's never a single moment where there's an animal that's with us would see us not fully clothed? I think it's one of those cases where something feels normal, therefore it must be right. But it's not that serious. She doesn't have a problem with it, the dog doesn't have a problem with it, and if the girlfriend did get as upset as the OP described here, then she probably took it to mean that he was implying that she was doing something naughty with the dog, which is an even more weird thing than just living your life with this dog in the way you want to that's not hurting anybody. But maybe you see this completely differently. Maybe you think this is the weirdest thing ever. If so, let me know your thoughts down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I'm a pregnant 28-year-old woman, and my husband told me he's in love with my sister. I don't know why this is happening to me. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My sister and I had a terrible life growing up with a passive mother and a terrorizing stepfather. My sister was my protector and role model since none of the adults were. She tried to shift my stepdad's hurtful and horrible treatment on her when he got sloshed so that he wouldn't hurt me. When she left for college, she let me stay in her bed while she slept on the floor in her student room the days I managed to run away from home. When I turned 16, she let me move in with her permanently. We never saw our parents again. My husband is very similar to my sister. They're both very calm and kind, both very intelligent. They have the same sense of humor, love the same music, books, movies, and games. It's like a weird perverted thing that I found the male version of my sister to fall in love with. They get along very well, and that was so important to me because they're my only family. We got married a year ago, after 6 years together, and I'm 27 weeks pregnant now with our first baby. My sister, who's 32 by the way, met her boyfriend, who's 30, a few years ago. He got along very well with me and my husband, although I always felt that my husband never really liked the guy. When I asked him once why he didn't like him, he just got flustered and told me that he didn't know it was noticeable and apologized. He told me he just didn't think he was good enough for her. Her boyfriend proposed to her last night, to my sister. We were just having pizzas and they were having brewskis in my sister's balcony, and the boyfriend just suddenly went down on his knees and took out a ring. She was very surprised, but happy all the same, and said yes. When we went back home, my husband was a little bit tipsy. He told me he wasn't tired and that he was gonna have one more brewski and watch TV and that I should go to bed. I went back to the living area and he was sitting there crying. I asked him what was going on and he told me that he was in love with my sister, has been for years, and that he knew how wrong this was. He told me that he loved me very much and promised to be a good husband and father to our daughter. He slept on the couch. He's still sleeping now. I am shocked and full of anxiety. I don't know what to do or how to feel about this. My sister, should I tell her? Nothing can be the same again, but she's my only family and my best friend. And my husband, is this over? I have been so blind. Now I see everything. Of course he's in love with her. How could I be shocked now? Can I save this marriage and my baby? I promised her a better life than the one I had. I promised her kind and loving parents. I can't let her come into this world with estranged parents and new people in their lives. What can I do? Then there was an update. He is awake now and I have spoken to him. He apologized for hurting me last night. He said that he just felt despair, like he had something very beloved and important in his life that he lost and he was mourning it. He told me that he loved me very much and he wanted for this to work for us and the baby. I asked him if he loved her more than he loved me, and he just said it's a different type of love. I asked him if he could choose between me or her, and he said that he would choose me. I asked him if he thought that she was more beautiful, and he said that I'm conventionally more attractive. I asked him if he has stayed with me all of these years to be near her. He said I was being unfair to him because he did love me. I asked him if he's okay never seeing her again. He teared up, but then said he would do anything to save this marriage. He then added that he never really had a mother or a female figure in his life. That's probably why he was attached to her, because she is very warm and loving. I asked him, do you love her as a mother figure or do you want to sleep with her? He didn't want to answer. I asked him if he fantasized about her while sleeping with me. He refused to answer at first, but then said, why are you doing this to yourself? I asked him if he will lose interest in me if she's out of our lives and it's just us. He looked like he was thinking about this for the first time, and then he said that he chose me and my baby. He wants to start therapy and counseling because he thinks this marriage is salvageable. The next update. We had a dinner with my sister and her new fiance. My husband was unusually silent and didn't initiate any talk with my sister, and he barely looked at her. It was a nice dinner. My sister is too happy to notice anything with her engagement and trip tomorrow. Before she went, however, my husband hugged her longer than usual. He told her he was happy for her and wished her a great trip. All while hugging her, then he held her hand and told her, "I didn't congratulate you properly yesterday because I was sloshed." And then he congratulated her again. He started tearing up again. Then he hugged my sister's fiance and congratulated him. He was silent on our way home. He told me he loved me when we got back and that he will do anything to make this work, that I shouldn't make any decisions while hurt. We are starting couples therapy. I want him to be 100% honest. He asked me not to tell anyone about his confession because it meant nothing. I told him that I didn't want my sister around anymore if I would give him a chance. He asked me how this would work when we're always together. She will suspect something and he doesn't want me to tell her because he's embarrassed. I told him he could just minimize his interactions with her. I told him to sleep on the couch again tonight because I haven't made up my mind about my next move yet, and that until then, it's the couch for him. Then there was another update about her decision. I don't think I have enough information to make a new post, but I have gone down through all the comments. I asked my husband for separation because I need to be in my own space to make my decision. We're also starting marriage counseling. Whether we stay together or not, I want to know everything that he has been withholding from me. He thinks I'm torturing myself, but he's wrong. I'm tortured with half-truths. With marriage counseling, I hope I could get to the bottom of his feelings in a safe environment. He cried when I told him that I wanted to separate. He told me he has lost everything in one day because of a sloshed, tipsy confession that meant nothing. He loves me and wants to be with me. He suggested that we move away. He has had job offers in other cities on several occasions. He said this could be our new start. We were renovating the basement this summer to make it a guest room because our current guest room is being turned into a baby room. He will live in the basement. It has separate entrances and the mini kitchen is almost finished. I have decided not to tell my sister about any of this. This is my battle in my marriage. I love my sister so much, but I'll be honest here. I resent her. I'm jealous of her and I think I always have been jealous of her. She's a way better person than I am. I hate that I've never had the chance to return the favor, as she's always been perfect and never needed help. I resent that she isn't as angry as I am about the injustice that we had to endure. I hate that she's so good to me and my husband. I hate that she sees how much of a better person she is, and I hate that I don't blame her for him loving her instead of me. And here is the aftermath to the whole situation of my husband confessing to being in love with my sister. Hi, I was here about a month ago with my woe about my husband breaking down and confessing that he was in love with my sister and has been for years. The short version is that we're getting a divorce and that he doesn't want to have anything to do with our daughter. After my sister's engagement and his confession, he made me a promise that he will love me and that he's going to do all in his power to be a good and loving husband and father. He didn't want me to tell my sister anything because he was embarrassed, and we slowly started to plan a future together in another city. He was already getting a better job offer in the other city, and now he thought it was time to move on. I agreed. We started marriage counseling. I told my sister that we were moving and she was very distraught, but she, as always, didn't object and supported me. I didn't know if she felt it was weird that my husband wasn't hanging with us anymore, but she never asked. She was probably just busy with her own happiness and the changes in her life. After her vacation, she came home and told me everything. She was pregnant and she was glowing. And that was the reason for this sudden engagement. Her fiance wanted to get married before the baby was born. She asked me to keep it a secret. She probably didn't mean even for my husband, but I kept it a secret anyway, because she was waiting for the second trimester to make the announcement. She finally broke down crying, however, about me moving away when she needed me the most, but then later apologized for being selfish. She understood that we needed to provide the best life for my daughter, including finding better jobs elsewhere. I cried for a whole week. A week ago, my husband was in a job interview in the other city, and he was going to stay there for the week to sign a lease to a new apartment. We thought we could try out the new life before selling our house to buy a new one there. My sister and her boyfriend made the announcement that they were expecting last Tuesday, the day after my husband's interview. Not 30 minutes later, my husband called me. He was sloshed and he was crying and asking if it was true and if I knew. He called me a cruel liar for not telling him. He said it was so unfair. My sister's fiance is a loser and he didn't deserve her. Her fiance is a carpenter and my sister is a pediatrician, and he told me he needed to be alone for a while, so he switched off his phone. On Friday, he texted me that he didn't want to be with me anymore and that he didn't want to be in my daughter's life. He was sorry but couldn't do it anymore. He said if I agreed to free him from his responsibilities as a father, he will give me the house. I tried calling calling him, but he switched his phone off again. I cried all night. Yesterday morning, my sister called me to ask what's up. My husband has asked her to meet up with him because he wanted to tell her something that he couldn't say over the phone, that he was coming over on Monday to see her. She asked me what was going on, but I was too tired to tell her anything. She and her fiance are coming over today, and I will probably need to tell her everything now. And this is the final update. My sister was here and I told her everything. I got help from showing her parts of what I have written here because honestly I'm too tired to go into details about what I've been going through all of these weeks. I told her that my husband was going to call asking to meet her, probably to tell her that he loved her, or maybe something more sinister, so she needed to stay away from him. Her fiance was on the edge of his seat with anger. My sister was just crying and apologizing and trying to hug and stroke my hair. I hated her touch, but I don't know why. I know nothing is her fault. I told my sister that now that I warned her, I want to be on my own for a while and I don't want to be in contact with any of them. I have been thinking about moving to another city. There's a small town that one of my best high school friends lives in after getting married. It's up north and everything is bigger and better and cheaper. I can easily find a small rental unit until the divorce is final and I can easily get a job there. If I can manage a place there, I can give birth up there with zero stress. I've texted my husband that I've told my sister everything and that both her and her fiance are not happy. He called me an hour later. He apologized and told me that he didn't mean to freak her out. He just wanted to see her and say goodbye, but that he wouldn't bother her if she felt scared. He's still the same man and wouldn't let anything happen to her. He didn't ask about me or my baby. He's staying in the new place and he's starting his new job in September. He thought he would come back to say goodbye before moving to his new city permanently. My sister texted me later that she loved me and would stay out of my way if that's what I wanted, but to please not go through with my plans to move because she needs me and she would do anything to make it up to me. I didn't answer. I hate it when she's so perfect and kind. F off. So am I the jerk for how I feel about my sister, even though this was my husband's fault? This is a gut-wrenching experience that most people will never have to live through. What the husband did violated the sanctity of their marriage, destroyed her trust, scared the sister, and enraged the fiance all in one fell swoop. You really have to not care about the outcome of the person you're with in order to drop all this on them after getting them pregnant. The husband's explanation will probably be something along the lines of, I couldn't help it, this is how I feel about the sister, I can't control it. That might be true, but from the way he's acting, this is not a new feeling. It just didn't come out of nowhere. He's had this brewing in him for who knows how long, years probably. So why get the original poster here, the wife pregnant, and then essentially abandon her when he doesn't get what he wants? It's so cruel and heartless. And not to mention the collateral damage that it's going to leave between the sister and the OP here. The fact that when he made that final phone call that he didn't care at all about the baby or the OP, he just wanted to emphasize that he's still the same man and he wouldn't let anything happen to the sister. Not to the OP, not to the baby, but to the sister. Says all you need to know about his character when it comes to this whole situation. And basically the whole thing earlier is all just a lie. He's saying, I'll do everything in my power to prove that this marriage will work and I'll be dedicated to you and only you. And then even suggest moving to a different city as if that would suddenly fix anything. But then immediately falls apart as soon as he finds out that the sister is also pregnant. The OP is in a very vulnerable position. She's married to this guy and now she's pregnant by him. And then he does this. Which is sad, because what could the OP have even done to have prevented this whole thing? I don't think anything. It wasn't her choice and she was kept in the dark. But if this was you and the person you were married to randomly just told you that they were in love with your sibling, how would you react? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for complaining about getting an expired breakfast bar for Employee Appreciation Day? I have worked for my employer for 3 years. This is not some rinky-dink mom and pop place. Our CEO made $16 million last year, and you would absolutely know the company if I named it. Today, I came into an email from upper management saying Happy Employee Appreciation Day and inviting us to share photos of our various local celebrations with our area leaders. It was then that I realized that the Kind Bar, 2 months expired, that had been waiting for me on my desk was my branch manager's offering as her appreciation for my hard work. How embarrassing, right? She must not have noticed that it was expired. Only, this is the second time she's gifted us expired food. Last year's employee appreciation was a box of expired Nutri-Grain bars left on the break room table. The prior year, she expressed her appreciation with a homemade fried egg sandwich in a Ziploc bag for each of us. Other branches have lunch brought in, get balloons and decorations, or even handwritten cards saying that they are appreciated by their managers. Our branch has a ton of turnover, and I have expressed to my boss's boss that my opinion is we lose so many people because my manager does not appreciate the hard work her employees put in. The job is very stressful at times. Plus, working with the public through 2020 was hard on everyone. Our branch performs well in sales and is operationally sound. We aren't perfect, but we work really hard. The branch consists of 2 part-time employees and 3 full-time employees, including my manager. I snapped a photo of my expired gift and sent it to my boss's boss with a note saying that I don't feel that it was a gift our corporate office would be proud of. I expressed my desire for our branch to be successful and that this was a prime example of why we can't seem to keep employees. Am I the jerk for complaining to upper management about my gift? Should I have just trashed it and kept my opinions to myself? If I had to guess, the boss in this situation probably isn't getting a budget to get these gifts. She's probably buying these gifts out of her own pocket. It's probably a situation where corporate says, hey, do something for your employees, but we're not going to give you any money for it and we're not going to give you any time to do it. You still got to finish all your work, but still get this done. And this is the outcome of that. If that's not the case, then it's a different story. But if money is the limiting factor here, I think the boss can still fulfill the employee appreciation by writing the notes or doing something that doesn't cost money but costs time. It's just going to be a matter of, is she able to do that outside of work if she's not able to do it while she is at work? But no matter the reason, I can understand why the OP is disappointed because they're hyping her up saying, it's Employee Appreciation Day, here's an egg sandwich. It's Employee Appreciation Day, here's expired food. I definitely get it, but let me know how you would handle the situation down below. Would you say anything to upper management or would you keep it between you and the manager yourself? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for not taking my child on vacation? I'm a 49-year-old male and I have a child who's 17 who has to get a very much needed medical surgery in a month or two. For privacy reasons, I won't go into detail of what it is, but trust me when I say that it's serious. The medical bills costed us a lot of money, to the point that we had to dip into our vacation funds in order to pay for it. But we paid for it nonetheless. We have a trip coming up to go on a family vacation to Los Angeles. We do this every year, it's basically tradition, and we want to have a separate fund so we can all do what we want while there. Basically fun money, as well as basic necessities. Unfortunately, in order to pay for our child's surgery, we had to dip into their vacation funds, and now we can't afford to bring them with us. I can't cancel this trip because that wouldn't be fair on our younger brother who's 11, and my wife who's 47 who have been looking forward to this trip all year since we couldn't go last year. I want them to come with us, but we've already spent the money on medical bills, and in my opinion, that's more important than a family vacation, and they should be more grateful. My child got upset when I told them this, and they haven't spoken to me much since, which I think is a little bratty, but I don't really know what else to do. Like I said, I can't cancel this trip since it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the family, but we've already spent their portion of the funds on this upcoming surgery and can no longer afford to support them on this trip. Am I the jerk? This is really twisted. Does the dad not understand here that the 17-year-old kid didn't choose to want to have medical surgery that they absolutely need? Nobody on earth would ever choose to have that be the option they want. And now that kid is being penalized who's sick and needs this surgery, and the rest of his family is going to go on a vacation without him? But the dad feels that it's justified because they've used enough money from this specific kid's vacation funds on his much needed medical surgery. I can't even wrap my brain around this. There was a quote that got posted on this that pretty much perfectly sums it up. You had the choice between Disneyland and a new heart, Ricky, and you chose the new heart. No take backsies. Because that's pretty much a situation here. If it's life-threatening, what other choice does the kid have? And what family has a vacation fund that's broken up into a fund that's for each member of the family individually? That doesn't even make sense. It's really sad how cruel some parents can be, and then it's normalized between both of the parents because the husband probably told the wife what he was thinking, the wife didn't call him out and just went along with it, or maybe vice versa. But either way, they've created their own echo chamber of, yeah, this is normal. Let's penalize our child who has a life-threatening condition by saying that they used up all of their vacation fund, but that didn't affect our vacation fund because we have a separate fund for us. This is a sad situation. I feel bad for this kid, and these are bad parents, but maybe you see their point of view. Let me know down below on jerk or not a jerk and why. My neighbor Karen and her manslave slave, aka her submissive husband, have made my life worse for years and years. My family and I were immigrants in poverty for years, and she made things go from bad to worse. She would throw bottles off her balcony at our car, she cut up our treadmill, she took all of our common space, she destroyed our recycling bins and our trash bins, and the list goes on for years. She comes up with the plan and then commands her husband to do it. So finally, I decided to take my revenge through a meticulously designed plan to systematically break her down to the point that she loses everything, including her own home and custody of her son. Here's what I did. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I'm an only child born in the USA to older parents. They were both 45 when I was born, who immigrated from Venezuela in the 90s. When I was 2, my dad was shot in the head. He lived for another 13 years, but the incident permanently damaged certain parts of his brain, and he was a completely different person for those last 13 years. He went from being the most loving, incredible, caring, compassionate person around to an aggressive, violent jerk who blew up over the smallest things, but only ever at his inner circle, me, my mother, or other close family. He always managed to keep his composure around strangers for fear of somebody calling the police and getting him arrested, but he would later let it all out on my mom and myself, admittedly mostly me. After the shooting, he could never work again, and my mom was forced into a position of being the family's sole breadwinner. We lived in poverty for many, many years because the USA wouldn't recognize her college degree and she couldn't afford to go to college again, so she couldn't work in her field and had to start at the bottom of the ladder. Dad eventually died when I was 15 of issues related to his shooting. Now, when I was 7, my parents decided to move into a town with a better reputation for their schools than the one we were currently living in so that I could attend a better school. They bought a house literally on the edge of town. Most of this town is incredibly expensive, but because on the other side of our street and across the town line there's a big complex of government subsidized housing, our area is much cheaper. This is the house with the jerk neighbor. The house is a 3-family. For the last 16 years we have owned and occupied the first floor, while the terrible neighbor lived on the second floor until recently. The third floor has been occupied by over 10 owners and tenants over the years. None have stayed more than 3 or 4 years, and some have stayed as little as a handful of months. Now, the second floor B, let's call her Karen, because obviously she has a husband who we'll call Bill, and they have a young son, Henry. So this is where the story begins. When we moved in, Karen and Bill had already been here for a few short months. The 3 of us on the first floor, Karen and Bill on the second, and the original third floor's owners bought the house from the same crew who had bought it and turned it into a 3-family, fixing it up in the process. Karen quickly showed her true colors as a bully. Over the years, there's been countless examples of nasty stuff that she's pulled. Her husband, Bill, is an immigrant himself, and he doesn't speak very good English. He's very submissive to her and does whatever she wants, but in front of other people, makes himself out to be physically dominant. In our first years here, they used to fight a lot, which we would hear regularly from downstairs. They would yell sometimes for hours, and occasionally it seems like things got violent. Henry was born maybe 10 years ago. He doesn't factor into this story until much later, but anyways, the point is, whatever Karen's done, she's always gotten away with. Here are a couple of the highlights. My mom always took pride in how well she took care of our trash bin and our recycling bin. Every month, she'd give them a quick rinse after that week's trash day, just to make sure they wouldn't develop a smell or a colony of bacteria wouldn't move in. Karen apparently wasn't so diligent, and one time her recycling bin got really nasty, and I mean really nasty, so she just left it out back. The context being, behind the house isn't a backyard, it's just pavement with a parking spot designated for each unit, and began using our trash bin. Lo and behold, ours started to get nasty, and mom quickly went from spending 3 minutes rinsing it out every month to about 45 minutes scrubbing it with soap and water to clean it out. Eventually, we decided we'd had enough, and she and dad sent Karen and the third floor tenants of the time a polite but firm email that basically said, whoever started using our recycling bin, please stop and use your own. You never asked our permission and we take good care of it. And ever since you began using it, it's become disgusting. We knew it was Karen and Bill, but mom and dad figured it was more polite without a call out, and they didn't want to start anything. Within a week, 2 things happened. Karen and Bill got a brand spanking new recycling bin, and 1 week later, we found ours had been mysteriously destroyed. Someone took a knife to it and cut it to pieces. We had no way of knowing who it was, but we had a pretty good feeling we knew exactly who it was. Yes, yes, we had to get a new one. Because we had no evidence of who did it though, my parents didn't say anything about it. Back when we could afford a car, we haven't had one since our first few years here, we used our parking space out back. Every time that Karen and Bill hosted a party, which back then was surprisingly frequent, they would toss their trash over their balcony into the general vicinity of the trash and recycling bins out back, which is literally right next to our designated parking space. Most of the dents we had on our car, an 88 Toyota, were from bottles thrown from the second floor balcony. We had windows break a couple times, same deal. Each time it happened, my parents would politely go upstairs, knock on Karen and Bill's door, and respectfully ask them to stop throwing stuff over the balcony because we know you don't mean it, but sometimes it accidentally hits our car. Each time they went and did that, Karen and Bill stopped, but they would do it again until they got caught during their next party. Again though, my parents never wanted to escalate the situation, so they never justified taking it further than knocking on our door and politely asking them to stop. This is another example of Karen's utterly terrible behavior, but it is also relevant for the revenge part of the story, so I'm putting it after this section. Our basement is shared between all three units. Each unit has a designated space boxed out, kind of like office cubicles, and there's some designated common area in between. Years ago, maybe 8 or 9, Karen and Bill completely filled their designated basement cubicle, so they just started piling stuff all over the common area. Eventually, they developed this enormous pile of junk in front of Unit 1's, our unit, oil tank for heating. My mom and dad never said anything because it happened over a long period of time and they didn't want to start a fight. And as far as I know, none of the third floor folks ever said anything either. But it got to the point where she and her husband were taking up common space area that was easily twice the size of their designated cubicle. Now, I'll be the first to admit that for many years my parents and I weren't great neighbors either. We didn't bully anyone, but due to my dad's condition, he could be triggered by seemingly anything, and suddenly he'd be in a rage and we'd all be yelling. I grew up in that generally chaotic environment, and yeah, there were several times when the police were called to our house for noise disturbances, but we kept to ourselves and we were nothing but polite and respectful to all of our neighbors, always. That said, you can imagine that our first priority was always my dad and his stability, and we had enough on our hands with that, so he and my mom always swallowed their pride and avoided doing anything to antagonize Karen, no matter how terrible her behavior got, and believe me, there are plenty more stories on top of the ones I told. But after my dad died, I developed my own issues for a while with mental health. Growing up in a constantly chaotic, violent, aggressive environment took its toll on me, and for a while, I had deeply depressive tendencies. I struggled with these tendencies for years and eventually wound up graduating high school after 8 years of attending classes in some form or another. Similar to when my dad was sick, I became my mother's top priority at that point. So again, Karen and Bill kept getting away with all of their nonsense. I got better though. Nowadays, I'm even off my psych meds. I got my act together and graduated high school, even college. I have my bachelor's degree and I'm doing some post-grad stuff for master's. Most of the way has been paid for by scholarships. Shout out to the absolutely remarkable book, Confessions of a Scholarship Winner. But I recently decided that as an adult now, and therefore as someone with a little more say in things around the house than when I was a kid, I had enough of watching Karen bully my parents, particularly my mother, for so many years. I wanted revenge. Phase 1 of my plan was to ease my way into the adult condo administration dialogue. I began helping out more around the house, as in around the common area parts of the house. I single-handedly redid the back porch's flooring. It sounds like more than it is. I just pulled out all the floorboards and nailed new ones in. I replaced both storm doors about 6 months apart when each one began having problems, different kinds of problems. It doesn't matter what they were. I also took care of some comparatively smaller things. I weed whacked out back for a couple hours, cut the grass out front a few times, and got up early so that I could beat everyone else to shoveling every time it snowed one winter. Not 18-19, but 17-18. I also began wheeling back everyone's recycling and trash bins after trash week every week, not just our own. After I did the first two things, each time I sent out an email to everyone in the condo to let them know that I had taken care of it, and all that I asked of the other two units was for them to reimburse me 1/3 of the cost for materials on their timetable, because of course I hadn't given them a heads up, so it was only fair that I allow them to pay me when they can. The smaller stuff from the last point, I obviously didn't need to announce anymore. The idea was just that over time, the neighbors would see me taking more and more initiative in things and being more active, which would go on to justify me participating more in inter-condo politics. I also made a point to keep conversations to emails so that there would always be a written record of every interaction. Phase 2 of my plan pretty much ran concurrently to phase 1, but had an entirely different purpose and was over overall entirely different. I began gathering evidence of everything I could. I asked my mom to track down all of the old emails she and my dad had exchanged with the neighbors, documenting many instances that Karen and Bill had pulled their nonsense. I went downstairs and took a video of Karen and Bill's stuff all over the common area, particularly emphasizing all of the highly flammable wooden and cardboard stuff they had piled up in front of our oil tank. I dug up and poured over the deed to our apartment, specifically the sections that detailed the rules around the common areas and the limitations of our units as compared to the others and vice versa. To my utter joy, Mom and Dad never threw out that old recycling bin that Karen and or Bill had knifed up, apparently because they just never knew what to do with it and never wanted anyone to ask questions. Naturally, I dug it up and took plenty of photos. I did one other evidence gathering thing that needs a bit more explanation. Karen and Bill are awful parents. Mom and I regularly hear the things they do to Henry through the very thin ceiling we have here. I'm decidedly not going to go into detail because even though I changed his name, he's younger and I feel it would be disrespectful to do that to him. But let's just say it crosses the line. This is a topic I'm particularly sensitive about because I grew up in a situation that was bad myself. So believe me when I say this part, this is the most satisfying part of my revenge. Let's just say that every time I could hear that through the ceiling, I took out my phone and started recording until it stopped. Finally, phase 3 of my plan was basically to bait Karen and or Bill into a trap that I set that, as it turns out, would have humongous consequences for them. Mom and I have this old treadmill that we got for free. It's in the kitchen, and lately we've come to the conclusion that it just takes up a little too much space. We both use it a little, but not enough to justify keeping it. She wanted to toss it out, but I argued hard to keep it around because I knew I could use it for this plan. It would be my only shot. Remember how I mentioned we haven't had a car for years? Well, eventually I convinced my mom to let me put the treadmill outside in our parking space out back. I bought a large tarp to cover it so it would be protected from the rain, and I told her I'd start using it more if it was outside because it's nicer to do exercise in the fresh air. I sent out an email to Karen, CC'd to Bill, and to the current third floor folks, asking her to move all the things in front of our oil tank in the basement somewhere else. Despite the fact that those things had been there for many years, I justified addressing it now because I'm the one addressing it. And that's different from before because before I was a child and now I'm an adult who actively participates in the intercondo dialogue. I asked her to because the way she currently had it set up is a safety hazard and I'm just following the rules. I further let her know that if she and Bill didn't take care of it within a handful of weeks, that I would have no choice but to take care of it myself. In the same email, I let everyone know that I was putting our treadmill in our parking space out back, so that if anyone had any trouble with getting into their spot, please let me know. The same day I sent out the email, I put the treadmill out back. Now, I figured nothing was going to change from all the other emails I had sent about matters regarding the condo's administration, and nothing did. She and Bill never acknowledged anything. The current third floor guys didn't want anything to do with going up against Karen, so he just thanked me for the heads up about the treadmill and said nothing else. It's important to note here that my real reason for mentioning the treadmill in that email wasn't in case anyone had any trouble getting into their parking spot. Needless to say, sure, a treadmill in the kitchen is a pretty big and obnoxious thing, but a treadmill off to the side of an automobile parking space isn't really big at all. Plus, I placed it in such a way that it wasn't in anyone's way, giving everyone ample room to maneuver around. It was just there, off to the side. The reason I mentioned the treadmill in that email was to alert her to its presence and perhaps associate it in her mind with my request for her to move all of her stuff in the basement. Their time was up, so one night I got up around 1 a.m. when everyone else was asleep so nobody would hear me. I went downstairs to move their stuff. I can't explain to you how much I enjoyed this. I bought a GoPro, strapped it to my noggin, and carefully recorded the entire hour and a half of moving their stuff around. I took the enormous pile of junk in front of my mom and I's oil tank and found a way to fit all of it into their designated storage cubicle. In the end, it was packed. I have mild OCD, and I nearly exploded at the end from how well organized physically everything was, so that everything was neatly packed together and all the space was used at maximum efficiency. It was glorious, packed from floor to ceiling and almost from wall to wall all around. If you can just imagine one massive, near perfect rectangular prism of junk, that's what I had created. It was a masterpiece. I was so proud. On the side the door was on, there was enough space to walk to either wall, but you couldn't move into it anywhere. I got back upstairs to our apartment and I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I was beyond excited. I wound up watching Infinity War to prepare for Ant-Man and the Wasp's then upcoming release. Sure enough, Karen and Bill took the bait. I must have been at school or work when they first discovered the basement because I never never heard a thing about it. In hindsight, it was probably best that I was out, even though I would have savored those angry shrieks like nothing ever before. In any case, within a few days, we discovered our treadmill destroyed. Similarly to the recycling bin of years past, it had been knifed up. I can imagine they probably wanted to straight up take a hammer to it, but they didn't want to make much noise. So they wound up just tearing the thing apart with a really big and sharp knife. They had seen we were using it, and aside from our trash and recycling bins, it was our only property that they had access to at that point. Several years back, I filled up the rest of the wall of our basement cubicle and installed a door with a lock, so our cubicle is now sealed off to everyone else, but the others are open and anyone can enter. Plus, I can imagine destroying a $1,000 treadmill is infinitely more tempting than a trash or recycling bin, so they went for it in retaliation for my stunt in the basement. After moving their stuff in the basement, I started timing my treadmill use differently so that I wouldn't run into them. As soon as I saw it after they destroyed it, I went straight to the camera I had set up in the pantry. It caught the whole thing. In true fashion of their relationship, Bill brandished an enormous knife and single-handedly destroyed the whole thing himself, while she stood next to him and seemingly ordered him to do it. She basically kept pointing around at all the parts she wanted him to cut up. With that in hand, I called the police. I reported the incident and told them my mother and I felt threatened by their presence, and we filed a restraining order against both Karen and Bill with the police the same day. I turned over all the evidence I had gathered of all their stuff over the years, and I also turned over all the audio clips I had of Karen and Bill terrorizing Henry. I figured since it was all audio and no video, it wouldn't be enough to get him out of their care, but maybe it would at least get the Department of Children and Families involved. Karen and Bill immediately claimed that I had broken a bunch of their stuff while moving it around in the basement, things that they had no doubt broken themselves. So I offered my GoPro recordings as proof that I had not, in fact, broken any of their stuff while moving it at all. The restraining order a person is allowed to file with a police report is always temporary, but you can always petition the court to extend it. Once Mom and I did that, it was granted. At that point, Karen and Bill hadn't been legally allowed to go back home for about a week, and since it became a longer-term restraining order, they were basically not going to be allowed to live in their own home for several years. So they made the obvious choice to sell the house and move elsewhere. Needless to say, selling a house you're not allowed to be near is a difficult task, and moving all of your stuff out of said house is even more difficult, particularly when you have so much of it. They wound up coordinating the entire house's sale from afar, with their realtor being the only person who came around to show the house. Once it was time for them to move, some relatives of theirs came around and packed everything up and loaded it onto a truck. Also, I was right. Based on my recordings alone, Henry wasn't taken from their custody, but DFC did get involved. I heard from their family that came around to pack up their stuff though that Karen and Bill did wind up losing custody of him. They didn't say much as to why, but they basically implied that their terrorizing of Henry ramped up a lot after everything went down between me and Karen and Bill, which is the only part I feel guilty about, but in the end, I hope this is a situation where the end justifies the means, at which point DFC was already sniffing around, so they wound up losing custody of him anyways. I have no idea where Henry wound up, but wherever he is, I obviously have nothing against him, and I hope he winds up in a much better situation than he was. Finally, I will say, for two such inordinately obtuse and disgusting human beings, they had surprisingly decent family members. The few times I ran into them and made small talk when they were around, they were pretty apologetic about the whole thing. I got the impression that this isn't the first time they're apologizing on Karen and Bill's behalf. I hope Henry is taken in by one of them and not chucked into the foster system. Here's hoping, kid. If we jump into the future, there is an update. Holy moly, this is great. Karen lost her job, or at least she's not working where she had been anymore. I assume she was fired, or at least that it had something to do with what went down, but I actually don't have a way of knowing. I got curious though after posting this because I remembered she worked as a guidance counselor at a school a few towns away, and I figured if the school had found out that the DFC took her kid, they might not have wanted her there anymore, and I may have been right. I got curious, so I asked a friend to ring the school secretary and asked to be transferred to the guidance department, where they asked for Karen's desk. She, my friend and the guidance secretary, just said matter-of-factly, "I'm sorry, that staff member is no longer employed here." And that was that. Seeing as all of this went down at the end of the 17-18 school year, I'm guessing they just replaced her at the beginning of this school year. The school's website lists one of the guidance counselors as having started working there this school year. Of course, I have no real way to know if she was fired, nor even if her leaving that position had anything to do with me and my revenge, but it seems like very odd timing if there was no correlation. So, was I the jerk for going to the lengths that I went to get Karen to lose her house? This is one of those revenge plans that was pretty unusual because of how meticulous and precise the planning that went into this was. It's like the original poster here pretty much thought of every possible thing that could go wrong and tried to have a contingency plan in case that it did. For example, the GoPro strapped to the OP's head because the OP knew inevitably they would try to claim that the OP broke their stuff in the move. And that was masterfully parried way in advance by having this GoPro setup already ready to go. There's even some funny elements of an Inception type of thinking where in the email, the OP tries to associate the treadmill with their overflow of stuff in the basement. I guess hoping there would be some sort of association, and there was. Because when they were angry about their stuff being moved around, they look at the bottom of the email and guess what? My treadmill is in the parking space. They just didn't realize that they were falling for the bait because the entire thing was recorded. If you look at this from a bird's eye view, it might sound like it's pretty straightforward, but you gotta remember all of the clever details that led to that outcome. The one thing that makes my stomach turn is the whole situation with their son Henry. I know it's been a little while since the time frame that this all took place in, but I'm hoping that the OP's actions ultimately did put Henry in a less dangerous position than the one that he was in with Karen and Bill, because no one, nowhere should have to grow up like that. So let me know how you guys see this whole revenge. Do you think it was going too far, or do you think it was just right? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? An entitled mom and her kid come up to me in a coffee shop and try to take my baby. While panicking, I punched her and broke her nose. Now she is trying to sue me for everything. She even sent a man in disguise to serve me the lawsuit. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. The setting is in a local coffee shop. One afternoon after our mommy and me yoga class, I know it sounds dumb, but it's a great way to meet mommy friends, me and my baby decided to get a coffee and catch up. Well, I would get a coffee. She would get that sweet boob milk. My baby, the lightweight that she is, passes out after that booby milk. I decide to be wild and get a second cup of coffee. I'm drinking my second cup of coffee when a wild entitled kid and an entitled mother appear. The entitled kid says,
"Oh, a baby."
I smile, but go back to reading the news and sipping my coffee. When I look up, the entitled kid is trying to pick up my sleeping baby. I panicked, obviously. I started yelling, "No, no, 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 no!" The entitled mother butts in and said,
"Oh, she wasn't hurting her."
And the entitled kid whined, saying,
"I just want to hold the baby."
I told them, "She's sleeping and you're too little to hold her, honey. She's heavy." The entitled mother said,
"Oh, just let her hold her. My entitled kid is very mature."
I responded by saying, "She is not a baby doll. No."
"You don't have to be a bee."
Excuse me? During this time, the entitled kid tried to pick up my baby and woke her up. So the baby starts crying. I pick her up and start hushing her. Now see what you did? Leave us alone.
"She just wants my daughter to hold her."
Then the entitled mother tried to grab my baby. I said, "What the? Get off of me!" And I turned away to keep the baby away. The baby is crying at this point, and the entitled mother says,
"Just let her hold her."
She keeps trying to steal the baby from me. I yell out, "Help!" And then I open hand punch her in the nose. At this point, the coffee shop employee jumps in and pulls her away. One of them says that they called the police. The entitled mother's nose is bleeding. The entitled kid is sobbing. I kind of feel bad for the kid. She's pretty little, but her mom should teach her better. The employees ask us to stay and wait for the police. The entitled mother says,
"Good, she assaulted me and traumatized my child."
The baby is still crying, so I give her that boob.
"She's exposing herself to a child. She is a pedo."
I ignore her, and the baby finally calms down. The police came and asked us each what happened.
"She exposed herself to my daughter and assaulted me."
Me, being scared that I was going to jail, said, "That isn't true. She tried to steal my baby. I was just protecting her." Luckily, the coffee place did have cameras. She got arrested for an attempted kidnapping. I have to go to court for it next month. Jumping into the future, there is an update. We go to court on April 14th for the criminal charges against the entitled mother for attempted kidnapping. I didn't expect to update before then, but then this happened. Me and my baby went to the park this morning and we got back around 11 a.m. There was a man standing on our porch looking lost. The baby was in her stroller sleeping and I put my hand in my purse and onto my mace. Can I help you? Joe, I'm looking for this person here. I have a package for her. He pulled out a thick envelope. It was Cardi B level thick. I'm her. I can take it. I take the Cardi B envelope and as soon as it's in my hands, I sign for it. The delivery guy rips off his fake mustache and delivery guy hat, revealing his real identity, a legal intern. Cool. You're being sued, by the way. Good luck. Yeah, that's right. I am being sued by the entitled mother. Why would the woman who tried to snatch my baby be suing me? How much damage could I have inflicted? Well, apparently I did $25,000 worth of damage. In this envelope was about 10 million pages detailing how she is suing me for everything that is wrong in her life. Apparently I had broken her nose, so she's suing me not only for medical related bills, but she also wants me to pay for them to fix her pre-existing toed nose. Oh, and of course, emotional damages to her and her child. Apparently the entitled mother has anxiety and depression because of me. The entitled kid has PTSD from the incident. Finally, I'm being sued for slander and character assassination. Because how dare I say she tried to steal my baby? Of course, at the end, she said that she would be, quote, willing to settle out of court if I would drop the criminal charges. Well, I took that letter to my lawyer and he said the judge would laugh her out of court, especially if the criminal trial goes in our favor, which is basically guaranteed. So I will be seeing her in court on April 14th and I will see her again in July for the civil case. So am I the jerk for breaking her nose? Who goes around and just randomly grabs people's babies? I understand if you're a little kid and you don't know any better like this little kid here, but the mother is just gonna go up to some random person and try and take their baby, or try and force the original poster here to have the baby picked up by their kid who probably can't even carry this baby. I mean, why would you take on such a risk to have some random stranger hold your baby when that stranger could drop the baby by accident and then they're off? Then it's your problem. This whole situation with a guy dressing up like a delivery guy, I've actually heard about scenarios where this happens when people are trying to serve other people. They'll pretend to be somebody else or pretend to fall over and then serve them with whatever it is they're trying to serve them with. I've seen a bunch of different variations, but I actually haven't heard of a fake delivery guy with a fake mustache. I think a lot of people honestly would have done a lot worse to this entitled mother if they try to come at their baby than just breaking their nose. And probably one of the worst parts about this whole thing is that the entitled mother is teaching the kid to behave that way and reinforcing it. So let me know what you would do if this was your baby and somebody tried to just grab your baby in public. And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my aunt to flash those honkers for a family group photo? English isn't my first language, and I also want to say, I don't think or feel that I'm the jerk, but considering my mother's reactions, I want it up for judgment. So background first. I am what you would call fat. I'm working on it, but still a long way to go. I've always been large, and I've always had what you call a baby face. It's something I've been bullied for growing up, so it's a sensitive topic in general. My aunt is an individual who likes to get in her way. If she doesn't, she will push until it goes her way. She is also the kind of person who likes jokes on others' expense, but never on her own expense. If someone would joke about her, she will be sulking or tell them off. I am not fond of her due to being a target of many of her jokes over the years, mainly for being big. Now to the event itself. We were celebrating my grandmother's birthday this weekend. Everyone was vaccinated, don't worry, and all my cousins, not her children, uncles, aunts, and their spouses were there. My aunt was hosting. Everyone except my sister, who just last week had a baby. She had an infection, and with RS virus and COVID, she was still at the hospital and could not attend, which is a shame because my nephew was the first great-grandchild. So it was decided we would send her a copy of our yearly family photo. When we were setting up the shoot, my aunt said she had planned something. She comes out with a big toddler cap and a pacifier, saying that I should wear it and use the pacifier sitting in the front as a fun gesture to my sister. I was horrified and I said, no way. My aunt just replied,
Yes, you will. It will be fun.
When I said no a second time, this time with emphasis, she raised her voice saying,
Don't be difficult, OP. Come on, put it on.
My mother just sighed and said to just indulge her, knowing my aunt will push until I do. Well, here's the thing. I don't know what I was thinking, but I said, okay, I'll do it if you pull your honkers out and pretend to breastfeed me. Everyone went quiet and my aunt's eyes went wide and just said, "Excuse me?" in a very offended tone. I followed up by saying, "Come on, flash those honkers." And all hell broke loose. My cousin giggling, my mother and aunt stood there choking with their mouths wide open. My aunt's husband shouted, "What did you just say to my wife? Get out of my house." More than happy to comply, I took my car keys and left, accidentally leaving my parents to a $60 cab bill since I was their Lyft. When my mom and them came home, my mom was furious and said she had never been more embarrassed in her life and I needed to apologize, which I just shook my head saying, "I won't. She deserved it. She grounded me." Not that she can since I'm over 18, but she hasn't spoken to me since. And my aunt also kicked me out of our WhatsApp group and Facebook group, so I need an outside perspective on things. So there you have it. Am I the jerk for telling my aunt to flash her honkers? Whew, I had to record this one a few times because of how completely absurd this was. I don't understand why he would go for that is the thing he would say of anything else, but I do understand that he would be very frustrated and probably hurt that not only are they constantly poking fun at him for being fat year after year and for having a baby face, but they even want him to humiliate himself and dress up like a big baby in a group family photo. How could they not see how degrading that is unless he was the one that wanted to do it in the first place? It's totally different if he comes to his family and says, "Hey, I got this funny idea. I'm going to be this big baby. You got a pacifier? I'll put it in my mouth." But he obviously does not want to do that and obviously does not like that being his identity. He probably could have got that message across a lot more clearly if he didn't say this to his aunt, but instead explained how this hurt him. But this was a more funny outcome anyway. So let me know if you think he is the jerk or not for saying this down below. Before we jump into the next one, if you guys haven't seen yet, we actually have some YouTube shorts now. So you can check them out via a link down below or just go to the channel page in the shorts section. I think you'll like them, and if you end up seeing them, leave a comment that says, "Honkers. Am I the jerk for eating McDonald's the day before Thanksgiving?" So my aunt and her kids are staying at my house for Thanksgiving because they live far away from us. Anyways, today I was going to get McDonald's, so I asked everyone if they wanted anything. My aunt looked at me with disgust. She asked me if I was serious. I didn't understand what the problem was, so I said, yes. She asked why I would even bring up McDonald's the day before Thanksgiving. I was confused and asked what the problem with McDonald's was. She told me that she always fasts her kid the day before Thanksgiving and that even offering them McDonald's was a temptation and disrespectful to their beliefs. I said, I'm sorry because I never knew that she did that and left to get McDonald's on my own. I came back to my house and I ate it in the kitchen. She saw me and told me she couldn't believe how disrespectful I was being and told me to eat in my room. I told her she's being ridiculous and I should be able to eat at my own table. She told my mom I was being rude and back-talking her and told me that she didn't want me to eat around her or her kids at Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow because of my bad influence and how it might run off on them. So am I the jerk for eating McDonald's the day before Thanksgiving? I know in the past when I fasted myself, it actually is a lot harder when you see other people eating food right in front of you until you're further into the fast usually. But in this case, it's this guy's own house. They are over as guests in his house and she has to assume that he doesn't have the exact same belief or is going to be fasting before Thanksgiving as well. I mean, clearly he didn't even know. You can't really expect people to just know how to behave around you in their own house. But let me know how you see this down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for how I reacted after I found out my husband ran a secret background check on me before we got married? We've been married for 3 years and I only just recently found out that before we got married, my husband ran a background check on me and my family. I found out because we were on vacation with his family and they were doing things that I had no interest in participating in a few times, so I stayed behind. He let me borrow his laptop because I left mine at home. I made a folder with my name and I was searching for it when I found another folder with my name. The folder was full of reports on me and my family, including my extended family and 2 of my childhood friends. I read as much of the reports as I could before my husband and his family came home for the day. At first, I was just hurt he would do something like this without talking to me first, but as I read more and started finding out things about my family and friends that I never even knew, I started to get angry. It's hard to put into words, but I felt like I had gone cold all over, but also like it wasn't me reading these things. So when I saw my husband, I exploded on him in front of his family. At first, he tried to say that it wasn't a big deal, and his cousin chimed in to say that it was normal and that he wasn't the only one who had done it with their family. When he saw that I wasn't calming down, he tried to get me to go into our room so we could talk about it privately, but I told him I wasn't going anywhere and that I was leaving. My husband told me to stay and he would sleep somewhere else or he would leave, but we were staying in a house owned by his parents and it felt weird for me to stay and make him leave, especially since his family was still there too. I ended up staying at a hotel for the night and we both flew home shortly after, cutting the vacation short. So am I the jerk for how I reacted after I found out my husband ran a secret background check on me before we got married? Oof, I think this would probably weird out most people, especially if the husband never brought it up later on to say, hey, before I really knew you, this is what I did. But it doesn't even sound like that's the case. It sounds like they had already been dating and were about to be married, and then he did this massive investigation of everyone, her friends, her family, and her extended family. The odd part about this is the fact that he kept all of that. If he was worried about something specific and he found out that that wasn't anything to worry about anymore, why would he still keep all of these reports on all these people? Did he just forget to delete them, or is he planning on using these for some reason in the future? Somebody who worked for a private investigator firm said that they did these sort of background checks every day, including for who the office manager was dating, and that this was more extensive than a basic background check by a private investigator. He said it's very, very unusual to cast this wide of a net off the bat. Unless something needs further research, it doesn't make sense. This would be a separate and distinct deep dive on everyone listed, not just a background check on one individual, and he would be charged accordingly. So either there was something specific that he was worried about, or maybe it really is just standard protocol for this family to do a deep dive on anyone entering into the family and casting this wide of a net while doing it. But it definitely doesn't sound like this is a very cheap thing to pull off. So would you be weirded out if you found out the person that you were married to had done this much of an investigation about you and your family, but only discovered it years later? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for letting my cat sit in the roasting pan? I bought a new roasting pan yesterday. I got it home, took it out of the box and left it on the table. I come back in the room 2 minutes later and no surprise, one of my cats is happily sitting in it, looking at me with big eyes like, for me? It's adorable. I take a picture and send it to the group chat for my family saying, look what we're having for Thanksgiving. I get the normal responses of lulz and crying laughing emojis. Then my sister goes, I hope you're not actually going to cook the turkey in that. You know my husband is allergic to cats. I say, yes, I'm going to cook in it and I'm literally about to wash it and put it away until Thanksgiving. She keeps going on about how disgusting it is and how they won't be eating anything out of it. It's gross. I just don't respond. My mom calls me about an hour later and tells me my sister is very upset and my mom is just going to get some roasting pans from the dollar store for the turkey because my sister is afraid of her husband getting sick. Am I crazy? It's a metal pan that I've already washed thoroughly. It's not like hair can be stuck on it. My sister used to share a pillow with our old cat and let it lick her plate. I know my brother-in-law is allergic to cats, but he sits on my couch, which even after vacuuming has a lot more cat on it than a pan that has been washed. So am I the jerk for letting my cat sit in the roasting pan? I just assume that washing a pan clean, especially if it's thoroughly washed like how the OP is saying here, that there wouldn't be any issues at all. But apparently some people are saying that there are possibilities of cross-contamination even after a thorough washing. One response said, wash pan or not, one can't reasonably expect a total lack of cross-contamination from the cat if it's allowed in the food prep area. My guess is the sister has expressed similar concerns in the past which have been brushed off, hence the reaction. And I think that is probably the main issue. They probably talked about the husband's allergy a few times and maybe it wasn't taken seriously. And maybe the issue is not necessarily that the pan itself isn't particularly clean, but the fact that the cat has access to the whole food preparation area. I guess part of it comes down to how severe is the cat allergy. If it's so severe that he can't be around anything at all, then it's probably not a good idea to have Thanksgiving at this house in the first place. But let me know if you think there's any risk of cat allergies here or not, and jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for my petty response to my boyfriend's purposeful incompetence about chores? My boyfriend has started pretending to be bad at basic life things like doing dishes and laundry like he can't do it, so I have to do it. I felt pretty frustrated with that and told him straight up that I knew he didn't forget how to clean since he moved in with me. He was always very competent living alone and I didn't appreciate him forgetting how to do chores. I said that when I asked him to do dishes and he refused until he finally did them wrong, that I was not stupid. He said that he was trying his best and I was wrong for saying that he was trying to manipulate me, and that from his perspective I asked him to do something and he did it the best he could and I kept at him because it wasn't up to my impossibly high standards and he couldn't win. And he wanted me to believe believe him when he says he is trying. Anyway, this may be petty, but I decided to give believing him a try. So, he had bleach stained my favorite little black dress. Instead of getting mad, the next time he had a family event, I put it on. He asked me if I was really gonna wear that. It looked messy. I said that I love that dress and understand accidents happened, so I wasn't mad or upset that it had bleach spots on it actually. I thought it looked kinda cool. He said that he thought it looked bad, and I said if he wants, he could Sharpie on the white spots real quick in the Uber. It ended up looking even worse. Another time, we were having dinner and he had done the dishes, but some of the cups and bowls in the dishwasher were upside down, so they filled with dirty dishwasher. I took those cups and bowls, dumped them out in the sink, but I didn't wash them further and served his food in them. He said that it was dirty, and I was like, they just came out of the dishwasher. It's just water, it's fine. He said that no, it was disgusting. And I said it was really no big deal. I was getting over my impossibly high standards of cleanliness, and I really didn't think that it was gross. The last time, I had cooked for a work party of his. After cooking, the dish needed to cool about 30 minutes before being refrigerated. I had plans with my friends that night, and I asked him to put the dish away after it cooled. He forgot. The next morning, he noticed the dish was never refrigerated. I said it was fine. It was just a mistake, and it would probably be fine to eat. There wasn't a lot of meat in it. He got frustrated and said, you can't serve meat left out overnight, even if it's only a little. And I said, oh, I think it should be okay. Stuff happens. He stopped being so lazy about chores after he realized that I seemed totally okay with leaving stuff done badly and that he will be living with it. But I feel a little bit petty for having been dishonest about it. I actually hate how my bleach dress looked and my stomach turns at dirty dish soap and unrefrigerated meat. Am I the jerk for being petty? This is actually pretty clever, and it seemed like it actually worked, where on the flip side, I can't possibly imagine how he thinks this whole story about how he forgot how to do dishes and laundry would even make sense. Who would ever believe that? Since when? And when was there a gap in time when you stopped doing dishes and laundry where you could even forget how to do them? Even if he wasn't willingly incompetent like some people put it, and he just never knew how to do these things in the first place, pretty much anyone can learn how to do any of those things in a very short amount of time. And I'm sure he learned how to do all this stuff real fast when he was faced with having to eat unrefrigerated meat or off of a plate that was still dirty. But the more important question is, do you really want to be with somebody who's faking something this dumb? What happens when something serious comes up and he's trying to get out of that? Like a situation where you actually need his help. So let me know how you would have handled this down below, and jerk or not a jerk. An entitled mother demands that I serve her fully grown kid an alcoholic beverage, but it turns out she's lying, and when I confront her about it, she loses it. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I'm in the UK and the legal drinking age here is 18. Yes, there are nuances that I'm obviously aware of, but these do not apply in this instance. I work in an extremely busy pub that sells drinks and takeaway cups to drink outside, an especially popular option in the summer when this story happened. And for the record, I'm a female in my late 20s. So the entitled mother and a kid come in at the busy bar. I clocked them when they walked in. The kid looks around 15 years old. At the point where she is ordering her drinks to take away, the kid is outside. She orders a pint of Scrumpy, which is a strong, still traditional cider, along with a Coca-Cola without saying a word, dispassionately prodding the signage with her manicured finger without even registering my existence. I repeat her order back to her, pour her drinks, and tell her how much. She ignores my offered hand and drops a note and a pile of coins on the bar barely within awkward reach. I politely ask her if she wouldn't mind putting the coins in my hand. She ignores me and says, "Keep the change," and walks out. After she leaves, I awkwardly pretzel myself around many ale pumps to fumblingly pick up the coins from the bar, count them out, finish a transaction in the till, and pop the extra 5p in the tips jar. Then I go on to serve the next customer. A few minutes later, I'm aware of her beckoning me from over at the no service end of the bar, holding the pint of Scrumpy. I make eye contact and give her a nod. Then I turn to finish serving the customer I just poured a drink for. The entitled mother from across the room says, "Excuse me." Hang on a minute, please. I'm just serving this man. "Excuse me." I finish serving the man and I go over to her and say, "Is everything okay?" The entitled mother, thrusting the pint into my hand, says, "This cider is completely flat." Sorry for the confusion, but it is a traditional Scrumpy and it's meant to be The entitled mother patronizingly interrupts me and says, "I know what cider is supposed to be like. This is flat. I want you to pour another one in a fresh glass and maybe put some life into this one." Can I suggest you might want to try a different cider? We have a hard cider cider on a keg that might be more of what you were expecting.
I ordered what I wanted. What I was expecting was that you might know how to pour a pint. Do you want to try again, or shall I ask him to pour it for me?
She points at my male colleague. Excuse me?
My son barely had a sip of it, and now he won't even drink it.
Me, now being shocked, said, "You gave that to your kid?" The entitled mother, sputtering a little.
Yeah, well, he's over 18.
Is he? I had seen him, and he certainly does not look a day over 15. The entitled mother must have noticed at this point that she was losing, because the next thing you know, she's gesturing towards the pints of Scrumpy that's still in my hands.
Oh, just give it back. I don't have time for this.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
I have paid for that.
I get the money plus her 5p tip from the till and extend it towards her. She won't take it.
I want the drink that I paid for.
If you can come in with your son and a valid photo ID proving that he is of... The entitled mother interrupts with bits of spit flying, screaming.
He is my son. He doesn't need an ID. I'm with him. I am his mother.
I'm sorry, but it is the law. Please take your money. I don't want an argument.
Fine, it's for me.
I place the cider on the back bar out of her reach. I close my eyes, take a deep breath. 3, 2, and before I hit 1,
I want to speak to your manager.
Yep, there it is. I haven't even opened my mouth yet to tell her that I am the manager, but she is striding over to my male colleague, who has clearly been rubbernecking while serving customers and cannot wait to get involved.
I need to complain about your employee. She has no customer service skills and clearly doesn't know how to pour a pint.
My colleague, who can barely keep a straight face, says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'll make sure she's fired immediately."
Now you'll pour a decent pint, won't you?
No, my pints are trash. The entitled mother, shocked, says,
What?
"Not gonna do it. 8% Scrumpy isn't the best gateway for kids, by the way. Just saying." The entitled mother sputters and storms out, muttering something about leaving a bad online review. I turn to my colleague and say his name reprimandingly. "Colleague, you should not have said that." "Sorry, I couldn't help it." I followed up saying, "You shouldn't have said that your pints are trash. Your pour is a lovely pint." So am I the jerk for not believing this mother's kid was of age and refusing to pour for her? Why does the mother want so badly for the kid to drink? That is really strange. Is the kid the one that's pulling the strings in this mother-son power dynamic here? And once she's already revealed that the drink is for him, the OP here, the bartender, could get in a lot of trouble for serving something to someone who's not old enough. For those of you guys that are bartenders, let me know what happens. Do you lose your license or something else? I'm sure there's probably a lot of consequences to this. The mother has the audacity to be this rude to somebody that's just working and leaving the coins all over the bar where she can't reach them, and then comes back demanding something that is illegal. I mean, in the off case that the kid is actually of age, I guess he could have just came in there and showed his ID, but that wasn't the case here, or else he probably would have done it. What would you do if you were the bartender here, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for making all of the women in my family leave after they all showed up to my wedding wearing white? I'm a 33-year-old male and I have a large family, mostly aunts and female cousins, aside from mom, stepmom, stepsister, and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all of those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They formed into a unit, which I admit is kind of toxic, and they tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be a part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking their confidence and their self-esteem down. Then, after a few months of teasing, they'd announce that they finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too, which is crazy, as my dad says. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even with a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and her job, and I discovered that they've been doing it on Facebook. I had them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable of being a part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the unit unless they apologized, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and bought gifts for my wife. First of them was my stepmom and my sister-in-law. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the women in my family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife reacts. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white, I'd have them kicked out, including my mom. They said this wasn't true and they'd never do such a thing, but they showed up to my wedding one by one wearing white dresses, and each and every every one of them was told to leave. After, they tried giving excuses by either making scenes or getting the men involved. The senior women of the unit, who are my mom and aunts, also showed up in white but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher actions, and my mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men in the family were watching stunned. My dad was on my side and supported me a lot. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in my family were pissed. My cousin blasted me on social media later, saying I excluded all of the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure that she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I had an argument with them, and my mom berated me, saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said that they were taking it too far. My mom said I took it too far by kicking them out because they were just trying to get a reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those, quote, bridezillas, and we're gonna change as soon as the prank was over, but I ruined my own and entire wedding by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen a lot of them in 2 weeks, and they've excluded me from everything. I just want to explain that A, this has been happening for years. The men in the family are split on this behavior. Some of them encourage it, like my uncle and my cousin's husbands. One is now an ex. And some are against it, like me and my dad and my brother. B, the women claim that there's nothing hurtful in what they do because they claim they're just looking out for us men, and that their goal ultimately is to make sure the women who enter the family are decent. C, my dad always ends up arguing with my mom and grandmother since they're the ones who started this whole thing with their behavior and attitude towards other women. And lastly, D, I'm not sure if I should mention this, but my male cousin, who's a middle schooler, said he'd make sure to leave the country before ever meeting any woman because of this, and it made me chuckle. Also, the dresses they showed up in were simple white dresses, nothing over the top, but they were still white dresses. I realized they went ahead with their plans even after I stated what I'd do in that case. So, was I the jerk for how I handled this? So essentially, this whole thing that the mom and the aunts came up with is sort of a hazing process to, I guess, weed out women that can't make it through it before they enter into the family. And that may be the case as the woman is entering the family, but why does it have to bleed onto the wedding day? For a lot of people, they see that as a very sacred day. And even in the context of their hazing, shouldn't she have already been accepted by the point of the marriage? Or if not accepted, rejected? Why would you still have to be doing tests on the actual day of the wedding? That's the part of the whole plan that seems inconsistent to me. The OP here even describes the unit that the women have formed in his family as being toxic. So the question becomes, how do you deal with a toxic family unit that is perpetually doing these sort of tests to anyone that is coming into the family? Let me know how you would handle it if this was your family, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for sending an employee home to change? For the record, I am a female. I am a 23-year-old senior software engineer. Part of my job oversees a group of 8 other programmers. I do not enforce a dress code. I'm fine with other programmers wearing t-shirts and tank tops as long as they are not outrageous in nature. But one thing that I will never tolerate is visible underwear. Recently, I hired a new employee. She is the only other female on board of the 9, including myself. She's extremely intelligent with excellent problem-solving skills, but I've had to reprimand her 3 times in the 2 weeks she's been with us about my no visible underwear rule. She refuses to wear a racer back bra whenever she wears a tank top. It's distracting because my desk happens to be directly behind hers, meaning I have to look directly at her visible bra straps all day while working. This morning was the last straw when she arrived wearing a turtleneck tank dress. I have an outfit similar to hers, and I thought it was a very professional look. What wasn't professional about it, however, was that her bra straps were hanging out and about to fall down. I called her into a vacant office room and I told her that I was sending her home until she concealed her straps. I tried making it clear that coming to work with visible underwear was unacceptable. She left and came back an hour later, but she was at her desk crying. I apologized and I said that I didn't mean to upset her, as well as how she will make a great contribution to our programming team, but she still seemed upset. I still stick by my rule, but was I a jerk by raising my voice at her and sending her home? I want to make the work environment distraction free. I've never really thought of that as the same thing as underwear. I guess you could technically see it that way, but even so, it's kind of hard to relate to why that would bother someone so much. I think the OP probably thinks this is more universal than it actually is, but people are bothered by all sorts of stuff all the time, and this just happens to be one thing that bothers the OP. Some people are suggesting to this person that had to go home and change to just not wear a bra anymore then. If there's no bra, there's no straps. And if they did that, I wonder if that would change the OP's opinion on it, since there's technically no underwear showing. Do you think that sending her home to change was too harsh, or do you think it makes sense in a situation like this? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for getting professional photos done with my dog? I don't have kids, I've never wanted kids, and now I will never have kids because of a procedure over a year ago. But I do have my dog, a border collie that'll be 4 in December, and she is my baby. When I first got her, I decided to get photos done with her since a photographer friend was hosting a fall special. Then I did it again the following year when she turned 2, and I went all out and even included a doggy smash cake, and she wore a tutu. The photographer submitted the photos to an online publication that was accepted, and the photos were a hit. And now getting these family photos done has become a tradition. I had actually planned on skipping photos this year, but Delilah had some terrible health issues and almost died. So I decided to go for it. I booked the photos for this upcoming Thursday and even bought a dress for the occasion. I was telling a different friend about it, and she made a smart aleck comment about how I have more professional photos with my dog than she does with her own children. And now it has made me second guess getting the photos done. Her comment came off as patronizing. So am I the jerk for getting professional photos done with my dog? Without knowing who the friend is and what their history is, it sounds like she was probably just making a harmless joke about, wow, you really love your dog, you got a lot of photos, more than I have with my kids. I doubt the friend was trying to discourage the original poster here from taking more photos with the dog. But again, it's hard to know unless you actually know this person. But even if that was the case, who cares what this person says? Take as many photos with your dog as you want. If people think it's weird, so what? People think everything is weird. It's definitely not hurting anybody, but let me know how you guys see this, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for refusing my husband's ancestral paintings and furniture? My husband's grandmother was a prolific and talented artist who specialized in large oil paintings. After his grandfather passed away and we moved into a new home, his family gave us 3 paintings. I love 2 of the paintings and loathe the 3rd, which I only put up with because it's my husband's favorite. It's a large post-apocalyptic scene of ostriches in a Roman ruin with skies of magenta. It now hangs in our office, though he plans to move it to the living room. Either way, I'm forced to look at it every day. Recently, his family cleared everything out of his grandfather's home for sale. My mother-in-law has been trying to get us to adopt Grandpa's dining table. We talked it over and agreed that we didn't want it, but she keeps bringing it up. She has the dining table in her garage now, even though she has 2 of her own. On to the issue. Yesterday, we were with his parents and his aunt and his uncle. His mom took me aside to show me a very big painting of sunflowers. She's been messaging me about this one for a while, and I've never expressed any interest. I told her that I felt ambivalent about it, and that the sunflowers themselves were gorgeous, but I didn't like the leaves, and that the painting looked unfinished. After dinner, his aunt asked if we wanted to take any other unwanted paintings home. In front of everyone, my husband picked out a couple of paintings and asked what I thought. I made a face and said that I just didn't like either of them. He said that wasn't very nice, and that I am inflexible. I did agree to bring home 2 of her prints. So am I the jerk for refusing all of these ancestral paintings and furniture? I may be the jerk because we have a large house with plenty of rooms for paintings. I also feel that I could have expressed myself more tactfully. Maybe I shouldn't have given my honest opinion of the paintings. My mother-in-law probably thinks that I am a jerk, but I don't want my house to become a shrine to my husband's grandparents. So am I the jerk? In a case like this, the OP's husband shouldn't have just put her on the spot like this when he already knows that she wasn't totally 100% on board with all these paintings. But it seemed like he did that as some sort of strategic move where he knew that if he asked her in front of everyone, she wouldn't be able to say no, and then later on he would be able to say, well, you said it was okay, but in front of all these people that I'm sure she wants to keep a healthy relationship with. Just because you don't like the painting doesn't mean you don't like the people who made the painting or the people that are related to the people that made the painting. And if she doesn't want it in her house, she doesn't want it in her house. At this point, they already have several of them. But how do you guys see the situation? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for telling my cousin about the light bulb mouth fact? I'm a 19-year-old female. My cousin is 22 years old and he's a male. We were hanging out last Friday and we were just chatting away while eating some nachos. I bring up the fact about how you can fit a light bulb into your mouth, but you can't take it out. He just says, huh, and we continue talking. Well, I guess he didn't believe me because he tried it Tuesday night. From what I gather from his story, he started yelling and his mother, my aunt, who's 64 years old, came upstairs to check on him. When she saw that there wasn't a way to get the light bulb out of his mouth, she took him to the emergency room. I'm not sure how, but they removed it without hurting him. He called me yesterday and he was pissed. He said that if I didn't say anything, he wouldn't have tried it. I thought that it was total BS and started arguing back that he made a stupid decision that wasn't on me. Well, my aunt was in the same room and he gave her the phone to talk to me. She explained that it might have been his decision, but I still opened the door for it to happen. She compared compared it to someone leaving a drug on the counter, and how it's both the person who laid the drug on the counter and the person who used it. The analogy made sense, and I feel really guilty now. However, I'm still torn on whether I'm the jerk or not. I feel like I'm just being stubborn, and I'm not really sure what to think. Any judgment would be greatly appreciated. Am I the jerk? The cousin is a 22-year-old fully grown man, and he stuck a light bulb in his mouth. This is not some little kid we're talking about here. And the whole leaving a drug on the counter versus the person taking a drug on the counter doesn't really apply at all. In that situation, unless the OP knew that that person was addicted to whatever drug that was, why would they just randomly take a drug they would find on a counter? If you leave a bunch of Advil on the counter, is somebody going to go up and just take all those Advil because they're there? No, probably not, unless they already have pre-existing issues. But beyond all that, why would anyone willingly put fragile glass into their mouth and think that it was going to be fine? That makes no sense. I probably don't even have to say this, but please never do this. But who do you think is in the right, who's in the wrong, jerk or not a jerk, and why? When I was hired at my job, they promised me a raise after 6 months. When the time came, they went back on their word and did not honor our agreement. So because of that, I managed all of their computer systems in a way so that only I could fix something, and then I left. Almost immediately, they came crawling back to me, begging me for help to get their systems back online, and I agreed. But at my new consulting rate of $200 an hour or $400,000 a year, they had no choice but to accept. Here's how I did it. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I work in software development using very in-demand and complex frameworks and tools. The average salary doing what I do in my area is around $110,000 a year for a relatively simple, low-level job. By this, I mean a position where the employee does not have major responsibilities, works as part of a much larger team, etc. I worked on site and then remotely as a contractor for 3 years for a company, hereafter named The Company, while I was at university. As a contractor, I was the only developer in the entire company of a few hundred people and was solely responsible for all systems, development, testing, etc. This includes databases, web servers, and much more. This seems like a lot. It was, but I had full control of my environment and autonomy. I worked on the software projects that I wanted to and felt would have the most impact. During that period of remote work, upper management was changed. After completing my schooling, I received an offer from the company for $70,000. I knew this was below what I should be making, but I also realized the following. Number one, I had full autonomy in my environment. Number two, I had some gaps in my skill set. And number three, by staying in this environment, I could fill those gaps and very easily prepare to transition to another higher paying job. So new management and I reached an agreement. I would accept a salary of $72,000, and then after 6 months time, we would meet to go over my salary and it would be increased by at least 15%. This was included in my offer letter, which both new management and I signed. Fast forward to 6 months later, I have now filled every gap in my skill set and expanded on it to increase my skill set even more. The 6-month marker rolls by and nothing happens. I send new management repeated meeting requests and they are ignored. 3 weeks into the 6th month, I go to HR and raise the issue. HR, Human Resources, turns ghost white and makes the meeting happen. That afternoon, new management comes into my office and offers me a 1% raise. That is correct, a 1% raise. I kept my cool though and reminded them that I was guaranteed at least 15% per our agreement. New management completely denied making this agreement and repeated their previous offer. I brought out my offer letter with both of our signatures on it and they started backpedaling. They said that they would talk and get back to me. I made it very clear that if I did not receive the agreed upon amount, we would have a problem. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, new management invites me into their offices. I am then offered a 6% raise. They tried to make excuses about budget restrictions, fairness to other employees, and whatever they could think of. I knew I had these options. Number one, quit. Number two, demand the 15%, possibly get it but severely damage my relationship with new management. Or number three, accept the 6% raise and maintain a strong positive relationship with new management, allowing me to blindside them later. The wheels in my mind spinning, I agreed to the 6% raise. At that moment, I decided what I would do. I would take the raise, use the remainder of my time there to look for another job, and leave. A few months passes though, and my plan expanded. I begin implementing the most cutting edge technology, using the most modern frameworks, upgrading everything I could as aggressively as I could. Of course, this provided immense benefit to the company. That was the plan. I entrenched myself in every system in every way possible, increased the skill floor for my position as high as I could get it, and left. 4 months after I accepted the raise of 6%, I accepted an offer for a salary of $130,000 at another company. I put my 2 weeks notice in at the company and all hell broke loose. New management knew they had messed up and they were completely blindsided that I was unhappy with my position. Since I had graciously accepted the 6%, they thought they were off the hook. With me, I took all knowledge of almost every one of their systems. New management freaked out, so I did what any capitalist would do. I offered to come back as a remote contractor for $200 an hour. They had no choice but to accept. So over the last few months, I have been charging them $200 an hour to do the exact same thing I was previously doing for significantly less. Now, instead of being out a few $1,000s a year due to my raise, they've been out of over $35,000 in a few months with no end in sight. I even hired one of my good friends to help fill the hours. The money is nice, but the look on new management faces when this played out was priceless. It was the sweetest revenge of my life. I want to add that I never did anything unprofessional towards my fellow employees or employer. I am not billing inflated hours, sabotaging, or anything like that. Everything I did and have done is honest work. So am I the jerk for putting the company in a position where they have no choice but to pay me $200 an hour because they wouldn't honor their original agreement? This is pretty wild. If you just do the math on this, he's obviously not doing 40 hours a week because he's a contractor here, but if he were to, that would be a salary of $8,000 a week. And if you extrapolate that across an entire year, assuming he only works 50 out of 52 weeks in the year, that is a salary of $400,000. 416 if you were to do every week, but at just 50 weeks, that's $400,000. So when you look at it that way, the meager 15% bump up that he wanted to get before he started working doesn't seem like very much at all. And the thing is, he didn't just try and come at them with their raise while he was already working there. That was a stipulation that he set up before they even started working together at all. So they can't even pretend like they were blindsided or that it's an unreasonable ask, because he probably wouldn't have started working there in the first place if they didn't agree to that raise after the 6 month period, of course. And he obviously made it very clear in the post that he's not sabotaging them. In fact, he's giving them the best, most efficient technology possible. So in the long term, when more people develop these specific skills, the company will probably be in a better position overall. It's just probably going to be a financially painful transition to even get there in the first place. It seems like people are split on this one. Some people think that what he did was nefarious and kind of shady to the company, but other people think it was totally justified. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for faking food poisoning to teach my boyfriend a lesson? So my boyfriend, who's 28, and I am a 26-year-old female, both love to cook and are very good at it. We often make meals together and it's something we really bond over. However, he has a serious issue with cross-contamination that drives me insane. As a result, I feel like I have to constantly keep my eye on him to make sure that he is sanitizing things properly. It frustrates me that I feel like I have to watch him, and it frustrates him whenever I point out something he's done that seems unsanitary. Last Friday evening, we were making carnitas when I noticed that he was using the same knife and cutting board that he had used to chop raw pork to then chop up onions and radishes. I could literally see red splotches on the cutting board from where the meat had been sitting. I pointed out that whenever I need to cut both meat and produce, that I always do the produce first. That way I can use the same knife and cutting board without having to worry about cross-contamination. I then told him that we couldn't use the onions and radishes for this dish because I was not about to top my carnitas with them now that they were contaminated with raw pork. He flipped out and kept saying, "It's not like it's chicken." And I said, "So what? It's still raw meat and there's still potential for foodborne illnesses." He wouldn't let it go. So finally, I was like, "Fine, I'll eat your tainted produce," which pissed him off further. He stormed off into our bedroom and refused to finish cooking with me. Without him knowing, I cut up new onions and radishes for garnishing, and we ate dinner separately. The next day, we were supposed to go to his parents' place as they were hosting a congratulatory dinner because my boyfriend recently got a new job. In the morning, I faked being ill and hung hung out in bed watching Netflix and reading most of the day. He seemed baffled by me being sick, and I said, I don't know, I mean, I did eat those onions and radishes that you were so pressed about. He looked irritated after that, but he seemed to believe that I was actually sick. When it came time to start getting ready to head out to his parents, I said I was still too ill and ended up staying at home. His mother messaged me later on explaining that it was extremely rude of me to have missed the dinner and that I should have taken some Pepto-Bismol or something so that I could be there to celebrate with them. I didn't even bother responding, and when my boyfriend returned home that night, I could tell he was bummed, but not mad, that I missed the dinner. Multiple people in his family are now pissed because they think that I am an unsupportive girlfriend. I do feel guilty about missing this dinner since it was important to him, but I was also at my wit's end, as I've tried to talk about the contamination thing with him nicely many times in the past, but he always gets pissed off about it and doesn't want to change his ways. Am I the jerk? Jumping into the future, there is an update. To start, many of you suggested that I purchase color-coded knives and cutting boards and that I have a serious discussion with him about the subject. These are things that I've done in the past, but I figured another try wouldn't hurt. I sat down with him and explained that although cross-contamination might not be a big deal to him, that it was to me, and that it would make me feel a lot better if he would please take my feelings into consideration. He promised me that he would be more careful, but then the next afternoon I saw him put a cutting board away without washing it after having chopped raw chicken on it. This obviously bothered me, but I decided not to say anything since we were fresh out of conflict. That same night I took him to a nice dinner as a way to make up for missing the one at his parents' house. We had a lovely time and things seemed to be on the mend for a few hours. But later that night, however, he developed terrible food poisoning, and to make matters worse, he was supposed to start his new job the next morning and ended up calling in sick. He blamed me for it because he thought the food at the restaurant was what made him ill. I told him that I didn't see how it could have been that because we shared dishes and I was feeling fine. The following day, his mother called and let us know that she had just taken his dad to the hospital. Apparently, he had been feeling super unwell and we all assumed it was related to a chronic disease that he's had for a few years now. He ended up needing multiple blood transfusions and tests found none other than E. coli in his urine. In the days following, my boyfriend continued to miss work and I discovered that about half the people that attend his celebration dinner that weekend before ended up sick. A bunch of other stuff happened with his mother trying to blame me for, quote, getting people sick, but I won't even bother going down that rabbit hole at the moment. If you hadn't already guessed, my boyfriend got fired from his job without having worked a single day there. I guess not showing up on your first week isn't a good look. On the bright side, he has shown a sudden and intense interest in kitchen hygiene. Apparently getting sick himself and having his dad end up in the hospital is what it took. It's been a couple of weeks since this all took place. A lot of you suggested that I break things off, and at this point, I think it may be headed in that direction. So was I the jerk? For somebody who cooks that much, how has he made it this far in life without getting seriously sick in that way? It seems like that would have happened a long time ago, but maybe if he ever got sick before, it was just mild and he attributed it to something else, but this time was really just the time that broke the camel's back, especially when it came to his dad, who already has a pre-existing health condition and was so sick with this E. coli that he had to go to the hospital. What's pretty unbelievable is that after all of this, he still blames the OP, the girlfriend here, on him getting sick because of the restaurant that she took him to. I mean, even if it was a restaurant that got him sick, how would she be the one to blame for that? She doesn't personally vet every single restaurant. Nobody does. And the chances of that even being the case are so small, it doesn't even make sense to bring it up since they were sharing the same food. But all of that is after the fact. Going back to the original question of being a jerk or not for faking an illness, yes, I think that that is not right. You shouldn't pretend to be sick to teach someone a lesson, even if you are technically correct about the science of it, the hygiene of it, however you want to describe it. In a situation like this, or probably in most situations, all situations, pretending to be sick to get your point across is just wrong. You're just actually lying to that person to try and prove a point. If you sit down with them and you tell them this is serious to me, I don't want you to do this, and they still disregard it, then yeah, you should probably break it off before you have to get to the point where you're teaching them a lesson by pretending to be sick. But maybe you see this totally differently. Let me know how you guys interpret the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for refusing to stop wearing my favorite pair of pants? My girlfriend, a 23-year-old female, and I'm 22, we keep fighting over a certain pair of pants that I own and I love to wear. I love to wear them almost anywhere. When we go grab something from the local grocery shop, or when we go out and walk our dog, or when we're just chilling outside. They are light and airy, but also long, so I'm never too warm or too cold in them. They are probably my favorite pair to wear, and thus I wear them very often. My girlfriend, on the other hand, thinks they were made by the devil himself. She hates orange and she hates the pattern on the pants, and she hates them as a whole because she believes they are ugly and inappropriate to wear. She also says I should get some proper pants to wear. Also, some of her friends trash talk the pants, as do my only male friends who care about fashion. Now, I do admit I have zero fashion sense, but I believe the pants do not look that awful for shopping in a supermarket or walking the dog. I also believe I'm not there to impress anyone and just want to feel good. I would like her to wear what I wear, but I do not want to dress well, so I am dressed for others, if that makes sense. I've offered to buy the same type of pants in a different color, but she dislikes the pants as a whole. I do not own many pants and would like to buy a nicer, more formal pair, but they're hard to come by. Money is not a problem, I think. Obviously, this is not a my husband didn't come to his own birth and I got mad type of post. None of us are jerks. We just are tired of talking about it and want to know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. So the girlfriend obviously really doesn't like these pants. She doesn't necessarily say that she's embarrassed when he wears them out with her, but that could also be part of the problem too, if she hates them that much. The situation is a little tricky because if there are no other pants that this guy loves as much as these specific pants that his girlfriend hates, what do you do there? Somebody's always going to be the loser in this situation. It sounds like he tried making this better by getting them in a different color, but that didn't solve the problem. So it sounds like the pants have got to go, or if not, there's going to be some problems. But let me know who you think is in the right and who is in the wrong here down below. Am I the jerk for naming my dog Brad? I've always thought it was funny when dogs have human names. Much more amusing to me than giving them obvious dog names like Spike or Jelly Bean or whatever. I never had an issue with Brad's name being what it is until recently. My sister got a new boyfriend, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. I don't think I have to say his name. Well, my sister came over the other day with him, and we met for the first time. Everything was all fine and good until he asked what my dog's name was. I laughed a little and said that his name was also Brad. He looked at me for a second and asked if I was joking or not. I told him no. His name actually is Brad. After that, his whole mood flipped, and the remainder of the visit just had an uncomfortable vibe. A while after they left, my sister called me and started berating me for, quote, disrespecting her boyfriend. Honestly, this seems like such a Brad thing for him to do, and I don't think I did anything wrong here, but maybe I'm wrong. Should I have lied about Brad's name so I didn't risk hurting his feelings? This is a situation that Brad the human probably thinks is a lot more serious than it actually is. The dog was already named Brad before human Brad was even in the picture. Maybe he was thinking that the dog was named Brad because of him, but that wouldn't even make any sense, which is probably why he assumed it was a joke. I think for a lot of people this wouldn't bother them at all, but some people probably would be offended by a situation like this if they started dating someone and then the dog was named after them, but it's just a coincidence. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk for naming the dog Brad. I deleted my boyfriend's RuneScape account because he cheated on me, or more accurately, I destroyed the account. I took all the effort he put into that account over the last 14 years and the billions of gold that he had in it and flushed it down the toilet. When he discovered that he just lost 14 years of work in the game, he lost it. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My boyfriend and I had met online well over 6 years ago through an online game by the name of RuneScape. He was 14 and I was 17, but it had felt like we had been friends forever. We both played the game very often and connected through it, eventually leading us to starting a long-distance relationship. Things began to escalate as the years went on, and we began seeing each other in person every few months or so. We were about 1,500 miles apart, so one of our main priorities for the future was moving in together and closing the distance. My job had prevented us from doing that, but we had finally set a date for me to move in with him in December of this year. Our relationship never had any serious issues, and I was more than happy to have him in my life as he was happy to have me. As I got older, I began to play RuneScape less and less, as work took up most of my time. He continued to play regularly, if not more than he had when I first met him. He could never really hold down a job and barely had an income, but I supported him throughout the years and even paid his rent from across the country after he moved out of his parents' house a few years ago. I never really minded it because he was a sweetheart, but we began to have problems. In November of last year, I couldn't help pay his monthly rent. I was short on cash after having to pay my own living expenses alongside car repairs and bills I owed to the state, and I just couldn't afford to support him at the time. When I called him one night to discuss it, he freaked out and started crying that he didn't want to live with his parents again. I tried calming him down and even suggested that I could help him find a temporary job until I could start providing for him again, but he wasn't having it. He claimed his parents would terrorize him if he returned home, hurt him, which I know for a fact isn't true because him and his parents have stayed with me several times. They've given him the world. I eventually did calm him down, but he remained passive aggressive the entire night, but we eventually hung up. Because I cared about him, I reached out to his father the next day and informed him that he would probably be moving back home after his lease expired that month. I explained how I wouldn't be able to afford paying for his living for a month or two, and if there were any local jobs he could work in order to, make an income. Apparently, a friend of his father needed help managing a small warehouse for his business and was looking to potentially hire my boyfriend for the season. It paid $15 an hour and was super easy, lifting boxes, sweeping the floors, and taking inventory. I brought it up to my boyfriend that same night and he was not having it. Not only did he not want to work in a quote crappy warehouse, but he didn't want to work at all. All he planned to do day in, day out was play RuneScape. I brought up a few other job listings I had found in his area and he immediately shot all of them down as well. He then had the audacity to comment about how he thinks I should work harder and possibly work a second job. I kept my composure and simply argued against it until we eventually hung up. I collapsed on my bed and cried for a good hour or two afterwards because of the intense emotional stress that I was under. Not only do I work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm also an industrial meteorologist. If I remember correctly, that's a lot more work than playing RuneScape every day and using my Hulu account. I really considered breaking up with him right at that moment, but I changed my mind and decided to give him another chance. Looking back on it, big mistake. I messaged him throughout the night and we sort of made up, but I was still a little uneasy about the entire event. He had moved back with his parents by the time December had come, and I began to help him look for jobs while he wasted his life away playing video games. I eventually persuaded him to start working at a small retail store near his house, and he thankfully began to make some money. I would still buy him video games and transfer him money like normal because I spoiled him, and our relationship began to feel somewhat okay again. Last month, both him and I put our money together to fly him across the US to stay with me for 4 days. We hadn't seen each other in person since last summer, so we were both looking forward to it. He arrived and we had a great time for the first few days because he could actually take me on dates for once with his new income. Everything was perfect until I caught a glimpse of his phone's lock screen while he was taking a shower. "When are you gonna leave her?" the Discord message read with 5 R's on the word her. I could have ran into the bathroom and snapped his neck in that moment, but I kept myself together as best I could without ending him. I never have felt so used, disrespected, or hated in my entire life. When he came out of the bathroom, I gave him a fake smile, but I genuinely hated him from that moment on. He could have dropped dead on the floor and I would have spit on him. I spent the remainder of the night watching him play RuneScape and I remained very quiet. He took notice of this and asked me if everything was okay. I lied and told him I was fine. When it came time to go to sleep, I let that jerk climb into bed with me and he tried to initiate doing the deed because it was our final night together. I rejected as politely as I could without tearing his member completely off. He was disappointed but went out like a light. Immediately after he went to sleep, I reached over and unplugged his phone and started digging through his messages with that girl. I feared I had misinterpreted the message I had seen, but I was completely right after all. Not only had he been cheating on me, he had been doing so for nearly 6 months, leading me to believe that he hooked up with another girl directly after I couldn't pay for his living in November. I scrolled through probably 100,000 messages and wanted to vomit my insides out by the end of it. He had talked trash about me, claimed I was emotionally abusive, just as he had done with his parents, and even sent this girl my private photos so that they could pick me apart physically together. When morning came, I had slept in because of how late I was up reading his messages. I woke up to find him on my computer playing RuneScape and eating my food. It was like all of our relationship had been wiped from my mind, and he was now an evil stranger sitting in my house. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tear him apart and kick him out of my house and onto the street, but I didn't. In fact, I gave him as much love and attention as I could muster that morning because I wanted to leave things feeling normal between us. I dropped him off at the airport and we had a quick and somber goodbye before I left him forever, unbeknownst to him. I drove back home as calmly as I could before crying my eyes out in a mix of complete anger and emotional pain. I ended up kicking my bed frame so hard that the wood split and I had to buy another one recently. If only it it were his face. I wanted to break his heart by the time I arrived back home, but I wanted it to really hurt. I logged into our joint RuneScape account that we had made several years ago, where him and I would work on training the same account and raising it almost like our baby. We had always joked that if we were ever to split up, he would take half of the account's bank contents and I would take the rest. I took my half and transferred it into my main account before taking his half and giving it away to random people throughout the game. Every last bit of it. Even items I couldn't normally trade away. I used a spell to convert the items into coins, which I then gave away as well. The bank was now empty. It then occurred to me that I had the credentials to his main account. They were written down on my desk, as he would frequently have me train his farming skill every so often. I didn't hesitate at all and logged into his precious 14-year-old RuneScape account, and I immediately took out all of the contents of his bank and sold it all on the Grand Exchange, a marketplace in the game. It took an extremely long time to clear out his bank, but he would still be flying home for about another 4 hours, so I had plenty of time. By the time I had sold/destroyed everything, I had 4 stacks of coins totaling over 8.5 billion. Now, what to spend it on? I wanted to waste his life earnings on the most useless, stupid thing I could think of besides him. I logged back into my main account to reach out to a friend of mine that collects massive stacks of burnt food. For the unaware, burnt food in RuneScape has no use. You can't unburn them, eat them, or even sell them on the Grand Exchange. They are, however, tradable amongst players. I've always poked fun at this guy for collecting burnt food, but I was now more thankful than ever to make his acquaintance in my revenge. I asked him what the most obscure, unwanted item was of the burnt food variety, and he replied, burnt spider. Lo and behold, he had roughly 6,000 of that item. Spider on a shaft, burnt is what it was called. The 6,000 of those in his bank, he was willing to sell me. Feeling generous with my ex-boyfriend's coins, I gave my friend the full stack of 2.147 billion coins and left a very happy customer. I dropped the 6,083 burnt spiders in his bank, but still had about 6 billion coins left to spend. With my remaining money, I decided to treat myself. I went onto the Grand Exchange and ended up going on a shopping spree. The first thing I bought were 100 bonds. If you're not familiar, a bond in RuneScape grants you 14 days of in-game membership. After trading all my 100 bonds to my account, I now have almost 4 years membership paid for me. I spent a majority of his coins on extremely nice armor and weapons, all of which went straight into my account. He still had about an extra billion, so I spent it on the supplies I needed to level up an expensive skill of mine. By the end of the afternoon, he was left with a measly 150,000 coins in his bank, all of which I gave away to a guy cooking pizzas outside of the exchange. Nothing was left. So I decided to pick up a pile of bones off the ground and leave it solely in his bank. It might sound petty, but I laughed for a while. Now I know what you're thinking. This is so cruel, you ruined tens of thousands of hours that he had put into a game. Well, it was time he learned that I can be a bee, a mean bee. On top of spending every last coin he had ever made, I leveled up his defense skill. That might not sound bad. In fact, it sounds like a good thing. I helped his account progress, right? Well, no. Unfortunately for my ex, he had what players commonly refer to as a pure account, meaning he never ever dared to level his defense skill from level 1 in order to keep the lowest defense stats but have high offensive stats. Well, not anymore. Have fun with your permanent level 6 defense. Cycling through hundreds of possible forms of revenge in my head, I settled on getting rid of his house. It's quite an achievement in RuneScape to have a nice house of your own. In fact, he had one of the nicest I had ever seen in the game. In order to have built it, he must have spent well over a few billion coins. Too bad I had disassembled it all in a matter of minutes, deleting it all into cyberspace. And there's no insurance either. He's going to have to rebuy everything with his non-existent money if he wants to buy a new house. Bye bye, Casa da Cheater. Scrolling through his friends list, I decided to act as him and pay a visit to his friends who were currently online and admit that I had cheated on my girlfriend and was fully proud of it. If his friends hadn't removed him by that point, I removed them. All of them. Lastly, to add a beautiful little cherry to this revenge-filled cake. I changed his username. You're able to change your username once a month on RuneScape, so I changed his to let everyone know that he's a dirty cheater. I obviously won't drop his username here, but I did the best I could to embarrass him with a 12-character limit. He should be able to reclaim his previous username in about 3 weeks, but if he waits too long, I'll be able to swipe it and slap it on a throwaway account of my own forever. When he found out, he sent me a very hateful and aggressive message later that night, followed by pictures of him crying. I wrote him a sincere message officially ending the relationship, while also scaring him away by threatening to take him to court over sharing my private photos and possibly filing a cease and desist if he were to contact me anytime soon. I don't plan on doing any of that, I just don't want to speak to him ever again. So, am I the jerk? This was truly a scorched earth revenge. You might not think so because RuneScape is just a game, but this is obviously what this guy cared about the most for the last 14 years. I mean, he was even playing it while he was cross-country in the OP's house and kept playing it when he thought something was wrong because she was silent. That pretty much speaks to how much he valued this game and all the progress he had made over the last 14 years. I think the thing that probably twists the knife the most out of all of this is the fact that she made his defense level 6. So it's not even like he has a ton of defense anymore, he's just not pure anymore. I don't play RuneScape at all, but I understand what she's saying here. That's gotta be an excruciating thing to look at when you've had the account pure for so long. Because you probably get a lot of props for having a level 1 defense skill, I'm assuming, but nobody's gonna care if you're level 6. In other words, it sounds like it's probably not strong enough to matter, but it's not low enough that anyone's gonna give you props for it, which I assume is the only reason why you would do that. If you guys play RuneScape, you can let me know down below. And lastly, if she could convert these into bonds, she could have just converted everything into bonds and then just given herself even more years of free RuneScape, but I think she just wanted to get creative with this revenge, and she doesn't really sound like she plays RuneScape anymore, so 4 years itself is probably more than she'll ever use of the playtime that she'll get from the bonds. And if this all seems like it doesn't mean anything to you, just imagine this was the thing that you cared about the most in your life, and somebody went and did all of this. I do feel really bad for the OP because she's obviously really hurt by this and betrayed and had wasted a lot of time by this guy not just being upfront and telling her that he was doing this behind her back. But let me know your thoughts on this whole situation. Do you think this revenge was too far, destroying 14 years of progress on his RuneScape account, or was it justified? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Before we jump into the next story, if you haven't already, you can join the Discord via the link down below in the description. Am I the jerk for pointing at the kitchen when my mother-in-law asked, "Where's our dinner?" My husband had a serious injury weeks ago. He's bedridden and his family comes to see him every day. My mother-in-law keeps drilling what I need to do to make my husband comfortable, but does nothing to help. She just visits every day and sits around expecting to be fed and entertained. Sometimes brother-in-law, his wife, and kids join them and turn the house into a mess. Yesterday, my mother-in-law, her husband, and son came again. They checked on my husband, then went to sit in the living room for hours. I served them coffee and a croissant. Hours later, my husband threw up again. The second time, I had to take care of changing his clothes and cleaning the sheets to avoid infections. I was exhausted. I came downstairs and my mother-in-law looked at me and said,
Hey, where's our dinner?
I was shocked that after seeing me go up and downstairs so many times and cleaning and bringing new sheets and running around trying to go into the washing machine, that she'd expect me to prepare dinner. I'd already eaten a sandwich at 6 and yogurt. I have problems with my stomach and stress and pregnancy made it worse. I'm 4 months in. I pointed at the kitchen and told her to help herself out. She gave me a look, then said she didn't expect me to ask her to cook dinner in my house. I said I didn't expect her to ask me to cook dinner while I'm taking care of her son. She started arguing about the way I spoke about my husband, saying as his partner this is the least I could do, and called me unhinged for throwing in her face that I'm helping my husband. She got her husband involved, asking what his thoughts were on me making guests go hungry and forcing them to cook for themselves when this is supposed to be my duty as a host and homeowner. My father-in-law said that they could order food and call it a day, and he yelled at my younger brother-in-law to stop playing on his phone and order food, but my mother-in-law got mad and lashed out, criticizing me, saying that I wasn't up to the challenge of taking care of my home and my guests like an adult. I lost it on her and told them to leave since she kept yelling, disrupting my husband's sleep. She left after, saying she felt sorry for her son and grandbaby with an aggressive wife and mother like me. She told everyone, and my older brother-in-law said he understood I had a lot on my plate, but lectured me about how I should have respect for his mom who was a guest, repeatedly saying if that was his wife, she wouldn't have acted this way, and that I shouldn't use taking care of my husband against them. He asked me to apologize, but I didn't. For more information on my husband, he suffers from 2 major injuries and he's got a long recovery ahead. Right now, there's so much pressure to take care of him while keeping up with house chores and work. My mom and sister help out, but not my mother-in-law. She claimed that when I told them to leave, I was refusing to let her see her sick son, but I'd never do that. I lost a loved one before seeing them, so I understand her fear, but my brother-in-law thought that that was my goal. And for the record, I live in the United States in the South. Am I the jerk? It's hard to imagine the family being so oblivious that they would just come into the living room and sit there, seeing that she's doing all this stuff and still demand a meal. I think the more normal, obvious thing would be to try and offer help and say, hey, how about we make you a meal? How about we try and help you out? Maybe they perceive the situation being something that wouldn't overwhelm them or stress them out, but they can clearly see that the wife here, the OP, is in fact stressed out and overwhelmed, even if they wouldn't be in this situation, or at least that's what they would think. So rather than trying to start arguments and complain about why there's not food being served to them while the husband is sick, they should just help out. I'm guessing the OP included that little fact about this taking place in the South for a reason, I guess to imply that maybe this is not the culture of the South, maybe it's more normal to still serve guests even though you have all this other stuff going on, but even looking past that, it seems obvious that she just needs help in this situation. So let me know how you would handle the situation if you were the OP and this was your family and this was the argument that you were in, and of course, jerk or not a jerk, and why. My old witch of a teacher insulted and put down students. I recorded nearly every insult. She then loses half of our papers and then accuses students of never turning in their work and proceeds to fail us. She blames us for turning in our papers late when we didn't, and she is the one who lost our papers but still fails us. So I collect all the receipts, I get all the audio, and I get the old witch teacher fired. Here's what I did. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So this happened during senior year in high school 4 years ago. I had an English teacher named Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, or how she liked to refer to herself, Dr. Smith. She didn't have a doctorate. She was a mean old bat and hated anything and everything. She was ugly inside and out. To give a mental image of what she looks like, her face sagged so much that it looked like she had a perpetual stroke. She had about 2 feet in between her eyebrows and her eyes. Imagine Ursula and Cruella de Vil had a child, and then that child had a baby with the devil. Then you get Mrs. Smith. None of the other English teachers liked her. There was nothing that they nor the administration could do due to her tenure. That is, until I became her student. Her teaching style included, but was not limited to, yelling at students, putting them down with petty insults, having us read to ourselves in the middle of class, kicking out students that were dozing off, then later falling asleep at her desk, not letting female students go to the restroom for very obvious reasons, and the occasional losing students' work and then accusing the students of not turning their work in. This last part is what crossed the line for me. You see, I wasn't a grade A student and I sucked at English, so I always played my cards right and made friends with everyone, students and teachers included. So when I struggled and I couldn't do something on my own, I let my charm save me and cash out on my months of being nice to everyone. However, no one could be friends with Mrs. Smith. I tried being polite. I was met with rudeness. I tried asking her how her morning was. I was met with silence and dead stares. I tried asking how I could improve in my writing skills. She told me that she wasn't willing to help. Within the first week of class, I knew I had met my match. So halfway through the semester, we're working on a big research paper. However, the day after the due date, Mrs. Smith had gone up to Illinois for some family issues for 2 weeks. Mind you, we turned in our papers both in hand and on turnin.com for plagiarism checking. No biggie. We won't get our grades back for a while, but at least we won't have to deal with her nonsense, or so we thought. A few days after she gets back, only about half of the students got their papers back. The other half, including myself, were sitting there staring and waiting, thinking that she was going to go back to her desk and pull out the remaining papers to return to her students. But no, she told us to take out our textbooks and start reading Beowulf. Some students, including myself, that didn't receive their papers tried to interject and inquire about our papers, and she snapped back with,
"You should have turn them in when they were due.
In unison, we responded with, we did. Of course, she denies it, and within a few days, our grades drop immensely. At the end of the grading period, second 6 weeks, our report cards show a big fat F for English. Everyone is livid. And the worst part is, if you get anything below a C, you were moved to lower level English at the end of the semester. Between the zero from the paper that carried almost half of our grade and only a few weeks remaining in the semester, almost half of the class was doomed to fail out. Now, most of the students were happy with having to leave the class. There was not much they could do. But I was careful. Remember the teaching methods I mentioned? Well, Mrs. Smith thought because we were in a classroom that had no cameras, her behavior wasn't being recorded. She was dead wrong. From the second week on, I started recording audio on my phone every day from the moment I walked in the class until the moment I left. Every day. I caught every single one of her personal attacks on students on tape. When she fell asleep, I pulled out my phone and I recorded her. My pleas for help to improve and her refusal to help weren't left out either. Every day I would go home, cut the audio to keep the good parts, and every day my collection of dirt on her grew. And remember how I said we used turnin.com as well as paper? I had coordinated with all the other students who were going to fail to screenshot all of their turn-in receipts and send them to me as proof that they did turn in their work. When she decided to fail me for her mistake, she unleashed hell on herself. I went straight to the administration and scheduled a parent-teacher admin conference. A week later, my parents, the principal, the school counselor, and the head of the English department, and Mrs. Smith were all present. I started with how she had lost half of the class's work and most of us failed because of it. She denied it and again accused us of turning our work in late as well as cheating and a bunch of other nonsense and lies. I remained calm and just pulled out a folder that contained all of the screenshots from my backpack and handed it to the principal, who passed it to the head of the English department, who then asked Mrs. Smith to explain it. She instantly turned red in the face and started stuttering. Before she could get any words out, I say, "That's not all. Listen to this." I pull out my phone and start playing back the highlights from the semester. All the while I'm staring dead into Mrs. Smith's eyes while trying to hold back my grin. The suspense in the room would have killed Jason Statham. After the audio was finished, the principal looked at me and said, "I think we've seen enough," and asked me to leave. I sat outside of the conference room savoring the muffled yelling through the walls. I'm pretty sure I heard my dad utter the words "filthy C word," but I don't want to point fingers. The parent-teacher conference was on a Friday. I walked into class the following Monday to see an empty desk and a substitute teacher we all recognized and loved. 10 out of 10 would document everything again, but am I the jerk for making her lose her job? Even if there wasn't any recording at all, no audio recording, no video recording of her sleeping at her desk, none of that, how did she think she was going to get away with this, failing all of them, if they turned in their papers not only in hand, but electronically? That excuse of, "Oh, you turned it in late," goes right out the window when you can see timestamps on when the papers were turned in. So even if this student, the OP here, didn't have any of this proof, he could probably, in theory, go to the administration and say, "Hey, I promise you we turned it in before the deadline," audit her online submissions. But since he had so much proof, he didn't even need to get to that point. He just made it that much more simple. I'm not exactly sure what turns some teachers into these type of teachers. He calls her an old witch of a teacher again and again, but I can't possibly imagine that this teacher started off this way. Maybe it's just through years of operating in a poor education system where there's no incentives or rewards to do good, only punishments. Parents are coming after you, the district's coming after you, the kids don't respect you. All of that very well may be the case. It doesn't in any way excuse doing this to a bunch of students, losing their papers and blaming it on them. If the teacher lost the papers, that's fine. Things happen. You can't be perfect all the time and you can't control when certain things happen like that. But why not just say that? Say, "Hey, I lost the papers and this is what we're going to do instead." So let me know if you think the OP here went way too far by having the teacher lose her job, getting fired, or do you think it was justified? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Should I tell my dying husband that I'm pregnant? I'm a 39-year-old female and I'm a mother to 2 teens, and I'm married to my 40-year-old husband, Steve. Sorry if this is all a mess. It's a bit of a messed up story. The marriage was basically one of convenience. Steve and I are both divorced and have been friends for decades. This past spring, Steve found out he has a rare cancer and the doctors gave him 6-ish months to live. 3 years ago, Steve sought out the daughter he had before his marriage from an old one-night stand in his 20s. When he found her, he discovered his daughter, 10 years old, named Sarah, was being horrifically mistreated by her mother, who had some kind of mental break, I guess. Anyway, he spent a year fighting for custody of this child that he hadn't seen since she was a baby, and eventually he got it. Then spent 2-ish years working with her and getting her to heal and trust him, and surprise, he's dying. Anyway, the marriage thing was mostly about Sarah. We were advised that getting married would be the quickest and easiest way to make sure that I get custody of Sarah when Steve passes, in case Sarah's mother decides to try for custody again. As a side note, I do 100% want custody of Sarah, no question. I love her very, very much. She's already like a sister to my 2 kids and similar in age. The girl has gone from not owning a pair of shoes to being funny, smart, and all around a great kid. Anyway, we got married on paper, no wedding, and Steve and Sarah moved into my house. All the kids knew what was happening and were surprisingly cool with it. Yeah, so stuff happened between me and Steve. He confessed that he had been in love with me for a long time, and I kind of just said it all back to him, even though I'm not 100% sure of my feelings. It all just happened so fast, I don't know. Maybe that was wrong of me, but I wanted his time left to be happy, and I do care for him a lot. In the last few weeks, Steve has gone downhill very quickly. He is mostly at home except for a few short hospital stays. There are nurses that come by every day, and he is on strong pain medicine. So sometimes he's himself, but a lot of times he's really out of it. He's basically just here dying right in front of my eyes, and it sucks. And I just found out this week that I'm pregnant. I'm not sure I want to keep the baby. I'm old as dirt now with 3 teenage kids to think of. I'm strongly considering not telling Steve at all, but it feels very wrong. Telling him also feels wrong. He's more upset about leaving Sarah than he is about dying, so finding out that he's leaving another kid behind will probably only hurt him. Having the baby terminated feels wrong. Keeping the kid feels wrong. Nothing about this is okay, and I just really want a cigarette and a bottle of wine. Do I tell him or not? There's not enough room to explain me and Steve's relationship, but I'll give it a try, if only to sort it out for myself. We were friends. I got married young, big mistake. By the time I got divorced, he was married. After he got divorced, I was dealing with major health issues with my youngest. Then Sarah became his focus. Somewhere in that mess, we worked full-time jobs, buried 3 parents between us, made and received late night sloshed calls to and from our exes. Well, sometimes the calls from my ex were from a jail cell, but it was always about time. There was just never time. This past year, being single parents together, we were a great team. Steve taught my oldest how to drive. Steve called me at work when his daughter got her cycle for the first time. That was funny. We each had each other's backs. I was starting to fall for him. It seemed like it was inevitable. It seemed right. It seemed like we finally had time. But we didn't. And then everything got rushed and pushed together and compressed, like someone was pushing fast forward on our lives, or the writers were rushing the ending to go work on Star Wars. So yeah, I love Steve, but the last few months have felt weird and artificial. I'm grieving for the relationship we could have had. We're supposed to have had more than the one we do have. Anyway, go hug your loved ones or whatever the moral is here. I said more than I meant to, and I'm crying again. Gross. Jumping into the future, there's an update. The decision. I am pretty sure I'm going to keep the baby and tell Steve, but I want to sleep on it first. Also, Steve is definitely out for the night. I'm gonna do the dishes, feed the cat, and go to bed. Update from the next day, I saw the OBGYN this morning way too early. Seriously, why are you even open at 8 a.m.? And here's the twist. I'm not a month pregnant. I am over 3 months pregnant. No, I'm not relieved. I'm pissed off that I had another choice taken away from me. I'm sick of my life feeling like a speeding train that I have no control over. I'm sick of everyone romanticizing everything. I'm tired of everyone saying I'm strong when I feel like I'm just doing the bare minimum to keep my head above water. I'm just gonna be angry for a while, thanks. So here's the update with the conversation. So, this is the actual conversation I had with my OBGYN less than 30 minutes ago. Is the old IUD in there dangerous to the baby? The doctor responded and said, I took that out 5 years ago when it expired. I said, I have no memory of that. Are you sure it was me? You said you didn't want another because because all men are trash and you were planning on running away and joining a lesbian commune. Yeah, that sounds like me. In my defense, 5 years ago was when my younger child was having a tumor removed from his spine and his father showed up at the hospital with a 20-year-old girlfriend. So yeah, I may have blocked out a few things from around that time in my life. Then there was another update. Found out I'm like 15 weeks pregnant, not 4. The baby is a girl. She will be loved and a welcome part of our family. I will tell Steve. Last night when I posted, I was just sad and scared, and then so many people reframed everything in this romantic way, and I kind of got swept up in it and went to bed thinking I would choose to keep the baby and everything would be amazing and beautiful and blah blah blah. Then I woke up this morning and I was just kind of slap happy and in a daze. I found out that I'm way further along than I thought, and the reality of it just completely knocked the wind out of my sails. I'm mad that I never really had a choice. I'm mad that people think it's so romantic to have a dying man's baby inside of me, and I'm mad that I came home ready to talk to Steve and I can't because Sarah is skipping school again. And I get that she wants to spend time with her dad, but I made a deal with her that if she finishes this week, she can take next week off, and even worked it out with her teachers. And they've started Stranger Things season 3, and I just want to scream at Steve. Why are you starting a new show when you don't even know if you'll live to finish a sandwich? And of course, I can't yell that because you can't yell at dying people and tell them they're dying. Nor can you yell at them to tell them to just stop dying, which is what I really want to do. And he's all doped up and going on about how he's Hopper and Sarah is 11. No, you're not. You've sat at a desk and got fat the last 10 years and you've never punched anyone in your life. And you did not get that girl by leaving Eggos in the woods. You were in court for a year. I was there and it was hell, you jerk. I'm tired of everyone glossing over the terrible truth of everything in life like it's 90% just annoying maintenance of our terrible, gross meat sack bodies and paperworks, and you maybe get 10% of the real actual stuff that matters. And when that stuff happens, you're not even ready for it, good or bad, because you're tired and worried about bills and you're only half paying attention. And then later, you're like, oh yeah, that was the most romantic night of my life because you chose to remember it that way. When really, at that time, you were just thinking about how you wanted to take off your itchy pantyhose and wondering if you fed the cat. There were some comments that the original poster responded to, starting with, I'm blown away by your situation. I have a sense though, not to romanticize things, that if you keep this baby, which it sounds like you'll have to at this point, you will totally figure this out. You'll be a great mom to all 4 kids. Some good days, some bad days, but all 4 will be functioning adults, which is all we can really ask for. Good luck, and I'm sorry what you're going through. Followed up by, decide if you're keeping it. If you are, tell him. He can make videos and cards and do whatever that you can give to your child as they grow up. It would be awesome to know that even if my dad dies before I was born, he had so much love for me and he made these things for me. The OP responded saying, yes, I'm keeping it. Her. Of course I am. I'll tell him. We'll make videos and stuff. Did anyone else see that episode of Queer Eye where the mom had tried to write cards for her twin sons for every birthday before she died, and she couldn't finish them because it was too sad to think of all the things she was going to miss? Yeah, now I'm sad again. In response to somebody asking about how it went and if he was happy, the OP says, so I cuddled up to him and I showed him the ultrasound picture and said, this is our girl. He was quiet for a minute and then he said, she'll have a sister, which is not what I expected, but I agreed that yes, his daughter will have a sister. Then he asked if I was going to be okay, and I said, yeah, I'll be okay. And then we laid there quiet for a long time, and that was about it. He's been quiet today, but sometimes he's like that. I need to tell the kids and ask him about making a video or letters and cards, but I want to give him some time, some thinking space first. So I can't really answer about his emotional state yet. This is all I know so far. Tomorrow is my last day of work before I take FMLA, so there should be more time to talk in the coming days and weeks. And lastly, there is one final update. I'm not sure if anyone will ever check this again, but for anyone who finds it in the future, Steve passed away a few days ago. We're all okay. Things are okay. I'm doing fine. The paperwork is awful. I'm caught up on laundry. Everyone who read my comment that Steve and Sarah were watching Stranger Things season 3 and didn't warn me about the ending can die in a fire. It was traumatic. What a world. Was I the jerk for telling Steve before he died? This was such a difficult decision to make, but ultimately I think that she made the absolute correct decision. Even if she was trying to make his final moments more pleasant and easy, I think carrying the burden, the guilt of not telling him eventually would weigh heavy on her if it didn't right away. His first question was whether she would be okay, meaning would she be okay to raise all 4 kids, including a newborn baby. So even in this moment, he was worried about her. I mean, he did confess to being in love with her for his entire life, so of course he would be worried about her in a situation like this, since he knows he won't be there to help her. Even though the kids would obviously appreciate and want the cards and videos and everything, something about making those does sound very, very sad, because you have to consider you're going to be talking to the kids at every age that you're not going to see them, kind of like she described in that show. So in the process of making them, you have to live through all of the memories that you will never have with that kid, all of the kids, and that's heartbreaking. Hopefully he was able to make all of those before he passed, because obviously we saw in the final update that he did pass away at the end of this. So let me know your thoughts down below on this whole situation. Do you think that the OP made the right decision by telling Steve, or do you think that she, for some reason, shouldn't have?
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.